Could you beat Hardcore Outward using only a Greataxe? This weapon type houses some of the highest damage possible per swing, taking out even larger foes in a single combo attack. It gets the execution skill, multiplying your damage through the roof when enemies lie prone on the ground. Even with such power, I'd consider it one of, if not the hardest weapons to beat the game with. Every one of your swings must be precise, as Greataxes consume an absurd amount of stamina. They also happen to have a tricky moveset that can easily miss and get you countered if used incorrectly. In my many hours with this game, it is my least used weapon type that I actually have not beaten the game with. So, let's rectify that. Today we're going to find out if you can beat Hardcore Outward using nothing but the mighty Greataxe. First things first, we select Hardcore mode, which means every death comes with a 20% chance to completely delete our entire character. I thought 2-ton sounded like an appropriate name considering our weapon of choice, and I do have a legacy character set up this time around. Legacy options are a way of passing down gear from previous characters or ancestors. For today, I really wanted to use Copal Armor. You can legacy it to become green Copal Armor, simply boosting its defenses. Kind of a waste not to get more out of it if we can. While we can loot the starting island for supplies, there's not yet a way to actually fight the hyenas here. The pickaxe, which you would think would be a Greataxe, is actually a hammer. Not usually a big problem here, but accidentally bringing the dogs over to camp would not let me sleep in a bedroll. Took me ages to lose their attention just to take a quick nap. After waking up at my lighthouse and getting called a trog spawn, we again collect any loot we can find. The most notable being bright nobleman attire, because apparently the game loves having me play in a dress. Hard to give up -10 stamina cost so early on. Selling everything we find gives us just enough silver to buy a nomad backpack from the merchant, an iron Greataxe to actually deal damage, and fitness for 25 extra health. Before leaving town, I was sure to speak to Burak with the Greataxe equipped, granting me the execution skill. This is easily one of the strongest attack options in Outward that multiplies your damage when enemies are staggered. Then selling just a tad more, I'm able to purchase Steady Arm, improving our blocking. Super important passive for any melee build. Heading out through Sierzo storage, I happen to find 2 hide. Crafting one with any basic boot grants leather boots that are not great, but better than anything else we have right now. After dispatching the trogs, I handed over a bandage to Michael Aberdeen for a tribal favor. While doing so, the mantis shrimp that originally put a hole in his gut stealthily attacked. Spamming through the dialogue, I got safe just in time to bring the creature down. Takes me a sec because I'm not yet used to the Greataxe's moveset, but it's largely no issue at all. Sleeping here on the beach until nighttime means the water level decreases and Starfish Cave is accessible. This is a really small cave where you can find several spots of blue sand. I then ran alongside the beach because you can find even more when it glows during the night, and it's quite common near the water. While dispatching a few more mantis shrimps with cold rags I crafted, I felt a shiver run down my back. The dreaded Wendigo looms not 20 feet from me. Such a frightening beast to find so early on in this adventure. I might be brave, but I also know my limits. We're gonna quietly sneak past him for now. Sleeping near the hyena den brings us back to daytime where I can take out a few of the pesky hunters. My damage against them grants me the leg up, but this large movement forward each Greataxe swing offers very easily misses the dogs as they bite me. As the final dog chews away at my health bar, I also get inflicted with an infection. It slowly eats away at you until you can cure it, so that's nice and all. But luckily, we do take out enough hyenas to craft a Fang Greataxe. Just 2 fangs and we now have bleed added into our arsenal. Back in town, I'm sure to buy bitter spicy tea to cure this infection and speak with Lady Aberdeen, turning in my tribal favor and earning my house back. Oh yeah, and I can't forget to talk to Oliel, Yazan, and Risa once again to progress the main quest. I decided to head towards Blister Burrow next, where we can get some quick coin and not fight anything too dangerous. On the way there, I found this crate with a surprising number of elemental arrows in it. Another bow run, perhaps? Inside the cave, lightning rags clean up this infestation of trogs in only 2 hits. In the back, we can snag a giant heart garnet near this dead giant they were, I guess, eating? Also, how the heck did this guy lose to a bunch of mushroom monsters? While in the back of this burrow, a deadly foe was slowly making his way towards me. Somehow, I had managed to attract the attention of the one and only Troglodyte Mage. Not a queen trog, thank goodness, but still something to worry about when your best armor is a beautiful dress. I was sure to take out the lower trog who was buffed by the mage with ethereal magic. Then let the real battle commence. A Fang Greataxe is fast enough for one swing in between attacks, so I'm safe as long as I block. Somehow I managed to get in a full combo, that being light then heavy, crushing his health. And with bleed ticking away at the poor fellow, he goes down soon after. That would have been much harder without a lightning rag, as I'm doing much less stagger than I thought. He drops a dark varnish, which is definitely good loot, and here on this altar we can collect a mushroom shield. With more room in my pack to fill up, I decided why not tackle the Montcalm tribe next. These bandits go down no problem. Cooked crab eye seeds make for excellent poison rags, and the Greataxe really does house some insane power. Swapping between light and heavy attacks grants multiple hit combos that deal loads of stagger and damage in one. As long as I single out each opponent, I should be in no danger at all. The Ice Mage did manage to hit me with a blast of magic, inflicting a slow debuff that makes things a lot more difficult. With a swift kick though, she falls soon after. But now the Bandit Captain is left, and he's something to really worry about. Loads of physical defense on his armor, high damage from his sharpened blade, and I'm still slowed unfortunately. Considering he doesn't have many windows for me to move in, I quickly applied poison with a rag and bleed from my axe. Then blocking keeps me safe while both eat away at him. Not exactly a sportsman-like way to win, but hey, it's a bandit after all. The key he drops grants us access to an ornate chest. These fancy containers house useful loot, although the ones in Chersonese have a little less desirable loot pool. Finishing off the few enemies left here, we leave for home full of goodies to sell. In town, we can speak with Helen Turnbull, a researcher from Sorbor Academy, and offer her the giant heart and mushroom shield we found in Blister Burrow. She wants both of them for academic purposes and grants us 100 silver for our hard work. Selling everything else we found in the bandit camp leaves us with 300 some silver and 2 gold bars. Not bad so far, honestly, but we've definitely got a lot of work ahead of us. My next stop would be Conflux Mountain. I'm planning on taking the Holy Mission faction quest this time around, so why not take the Holy Mission Conflux path? This entrance into the mountain just so happens to be where Zephyrien is. He offers to assist us in taking down the nasty trogs and large bugs who've congregated in the area. Zephyrien is one of the strongest NPCs in Outward, at least lore-wise anyway. He's been blessed with power from Alat and stands as his champion. With his help, we easily chop through these monsters here. To open the gate, we wander around different corridors and pull 3 different levers, unlocking the intersection of Conflux Mountain where I can give up some health and stamina for 1 point of mana. I only need mana for buffs mainly, so 1 should be enough at least for now. Speaking to the Watcher down below, he teaches me the Cool Boon spell, which comes in handy just after when I took on the Glacial Taunosaur. A mistake I immediately regretted. I did have a fire rag on hand to exploit his weakness, however his jumping back and high damage claw swipes quickly spiraled me into a panic. I can only get 1 hit in after he swipes several times, and often that 1 hit would miss due to positioning. I always forget that Taunosaurs are indeed Taunosaurs, no matter how early on you can find this one. These dinos have a lot of health when you haven't found good weapons and skills yet. Dang it, he keeps stepping back every time I swing! Once my fire rag ran out, I lost all hope and ran away to try and buff again. Just under half health against the first real threat of the run, not exactly a good sign. Still, that does check off 2 mini-bosses for us so far. Maybe we wait on the rest until, we're not wearing a dress and straw hat, for goodness sake. After gathering more blue sand and taking on a few bandits, I hiked back to town. Now with a decent sum of silver stocked up, I asked the blacksmith to make me a full set of blue sand armor. Every blacksmith has the ability to craft a distinct set of armor. Different towns will mean the blacksmith there makes something different, with Loudhammer here requiring 10 blue sand and 850 silver to create his set. Blue sand armor is actually a noob trap of sorts, as it houses insane physical and elemental defenses so early on in the game. But it also greatly increases your stamina cost, which is tough to manage. I thought it was worth a risk, while I continue to experiment with the Greataxes' different combo attacks. Plus, I have enough experience to properly manage the downsides. At least I should. Finally looking like a real adventurer and not some farmer's wife, I left to speak with our good buddy, the friendly Immaculate. Ask him for power and we gain the possessed boon for decay defense. I then remembered, oh yeah, there's a free chest I can get. Argenson's stash was left near this massive shipwreck. Upon the initial glance, it's empty. But a more keen eye will notice another panel inside. Selecting a couple buttons, first moon followed by stars, grants access to a few items. Nothing too valuable, but anything helps right now. And since we can't do much else in this region yet, I left for Enmerkar Forest. Arriving in town, a merchant sells me 1 Prospector backpack, holding 75 capacity rather than 50, and moving the lantern up into a more useful location. A backpack most adventurers overlook, but still one of my favorites for its more slender design. Those of you who have been around a long time probably already know where I'm going next. The Cabal Wind Temple. Outside in one of the tower ruins, we can mine some palladium, and since I definitely don't feel confident enough to take on an Immaculate, we scurry right past him into the temple. Start off by pulling the lever here, then bait some enemies into the big room. Pull the lever again. Jump off the high spot for, ouch, a lot more damage than I expected. Pull the lever to blow him up as well, and then bait the mini-boss into the same trap for a lot of loot. I had a lot of trouble getting the Vile Illuminator to step into the death trap, but we got there eventually. For those who don't know, this whole process lets me instantly take out every dangerous enemy in this larger temple with the pull of a lever, granting Predator Bones and Horror Chitin for crafting, as well as unlocking the golden magic barrier protecting this thrice wrought halberd. Beside it, we find an ornate chest housing a marble Greataxe. Such a lucky find, let's go. Ah man, it's just a one-handed axe. They really had me going there for a second. Still sells well, at least. I took the long way back to town, gathering palladium and looting occult remains from the hive men. They're kind of annoying, as I managed to avoid their diseases until after they were all dead. Dang it. Hive infestation greatly increases stamina burn, giving you much less to work with at any given time. A few crab eye seeds to poison me should get rid of it though. Wandering around all alone after being banished from his fellow giants, we take on this tall behemoth. A cold rag with the cool boon gives me a large boost in damage. Unfortunately, I can't use my execution skill to cut him while he's down, as giants are unique. After getting staggered, they will get back up and instantly swing their long halberd. If you go to attack more while they're weakened, you get trapped in this very deadly move. You can also see how brutal heavy armor can be. My stamina is completely drained after only a brief moment with the giant, forcing me to bide my time until it regens. A bit more damage and we can execute him for the finish. And do my eyes deceive me? We get a gigantic strike of luck in the form of a giant kind Greataxe. A slower weapon, but one that deals much more damage and stagger while housing some hefty durability. I find these all the time in other runs and sell them for good coin. This is the first time I'll gain benefit from it as a weapon, which is kind of exciting. A bit short, considering it's used by giants, but much more stylish than the fanged weapons. In town, we use our resources gathered to craft around 4 horror weapons. Selling them instantly racks up about 3,000 silver, more or less. My first purchase was an elite hood from the blacksmith, a main item for the entire run and honestly one of the better helmets for melee builds. No increase in mana or stamina costs with insane boost to your character. Then I purchased the entire Wild Hunter skill tree. Enrage is going to give us more impact on our attacks. Survivor's Resilience increases health by 40, obviously helpful in hardcore. Predator Leap offers a high impact skill that moves you towards the enemy for great openings. And Feral Strikes is another attack skill that can do a lot of things honestly. Now we've got some options, but also some major downsides. Durability. Predator Leap especially destroys your weapon's durability by more than a noticeable amount. Nothing to worry about, I've got a plan to fix it in the future. Let's quickly grab a luxury tent for negative 20 stamina cost after sleeping and march on into the wild and swampy Hallowed Marsh. From this entrance, we're actually trapped by a magical barrier and a locked bridge. Inside the ziggurat on our right, we can perfectly execute the skeleton guarding the upper floor and smash the blade dancer on the lower. A little bit of parkour that I effortlessly pull off, and ta-da, the Jade Lich's idol. Place it on the pedestal in the main room and the bridge should be unlocked for good. My journey through the marsh is no picnic, of course. I fend off dinos, bandits, even more bandits, a roaming giant, and come on, another bandit? Where are these guys coming from? Since the giant town is just off to the side here, I paid the place a visit. There's literally nothing here. Well, at least we got to show off our giant axe to the giants. I bet they probably want to axe me where I got it. Yeah, they didn't laugh at that joke either. A short walk further on and we reach Monsoon, where I buy the entirety of the Warrior Monk skill tree. Focus grants me extra damage for a time. Brace is the best skill in Outward, staggering enemies and granting the discipline buff. Plus 40 stamina is an amazing passive, and then we get 2 crazy strong attack skills. Perfect Strike inflicts the pain debuff, making enemies weaker to physical damage. It also happens to deal some raw damage, which is completely unblockable by enemy defenses. Flash Onslaught makes you teleport into a different realm for a second or two where you're immune to damage. Doing so inflicts a burst of damage on all targets near you and inflicts confusion, making enemies much more staggerable. I think that's a word. This skill tree plus Wild Hunter allows us to quickly move towards enemies and tackle groups with very high damage. Also, if you can't tell, I'm trying to get as much stamina as possible. Run out of that, and you're probably already dead. Since we are in Monsoon at the moment, let's go ahead and begin our faction quest. The Cardinal informs me I need to prove I can uphold one of the 3 tenets of the Holy Mission, that being help others. Moveset can be found on the other side of town. He requires 1 Firefly powder, which we already have because it's the swamp. There's like 1,000 of those things. But take a look at this piece of dialogue I'm just noticing now. Moveset says he knew Alat before he was a grown man, remembering a time before the Scourge. Now I don't know exactly how long ago that would have been, but Moveset might just be the oldest person alive. Kinda cool. Speaking to him again, we can pay to learn the Blessed boon for lightning defense. With that task completed, we're granted an audience with Alat. With the rank of missionary, I'm rewarded Infuse Light, a skill that infuses my equipped melee weapon with light magic or lightning damage. Elenara doesn't have work for me yet, but she does remind me about Vendaval Fortress. They're gonna invade and destroy Sirocco if not dealt with soon. Sounds important, but nah, we've got time. After taking it easy and sleeping 3 full days, Elenara now has tasks available for me. I'm told to hike up a hill outside of town and burn some greasy ferns at an altar there. The ferns can be found on said hill, and doing so shows us a vision of the Scourge War. Hundreds of warriors fighting back a single Scourge beast. One much larger and more terrifying than anything we've ever seen. When all of a sudden, all the warriors and the beast are frozen in place. These large green vigil pylons are found in every region. They serve as deterrents to keep the Scourge away. Basically trying to show us that the Scourge actually never were stopped. It took the sacrifice of many good men and women to merely freeze the monsters in time. Until Alat can find a way to deal with them for good, they're forever imprisoned as ghosts with their mortal enemy. Oliel also sees these visions, as she has become a missionary alongside us. Struggling with the fact that such a sacrifice was made by so many, she proclaims how important it is we find a way to free these spirits so they can finally rest in peace. Back at Elenara, she explains the importance of our battle against the Scourge once again and sends me after Oliel. Apparently, the Montcalm tribe of bandits I thought I dealt with earlier have been hanging up corpses to feed the undead in Ghost Pass. Thinking this would grant them protection against the Scourge or other monsters, they're actually turning the place into a massive corruption. Just in case Oliel needs our help, we're sent to cleanse the green corruption there. While traveling back to Chersonese, I notice a small campfire alongside the road. Upon taking a closer look, we find a broken down campsite with a dead missionary. He was killed by a Levantine firearm and is carrying a letter that seems to have Mofat's name signed at the bottom. We don't have time to deal with this right now, but definitely important to bring it up later on. Down towards the exit to Chersonese, there's a dark ziggurat where the Jade Lich dwells. I don't want to deal with him just yet, but there is a valuable item I can steal from his chambers. The place is heavily guarded with several blade dancers, golems designed in ancient Harmattan, and 2 Jade Acolytes. My newfound holy power proves more than capable of slaying such foes, although the Jade Acolytes almost got me. They deal a surprising amount of damage. With the place cleared out, we can pull 2 different levers. These allow corruption to flow freely through the pipes here, unlocking a path to the Jade Lich. If we take the elevator down to him, there's a secret platform to jump off on. About halfway down, jump off and pull a lever there at the end. Ride the elevator back up, and back in the ziggurat near the first lever, a closed gate will now be open. Inside is a very deadly sword golem and elemental. I had a spirit varnish and was able to draw the golem away from his helper, which makes things much easier. With the elemental now dealt with, we see what they're regarding. A Zar Stone, the most precious gem in this land of Arai that are now almost completely extinct. Only a few know how to craft with it, and the Gold Lich himself was unable to mine for any more of them. One really isn't useful, so we leave to return another time. Dodging through the poisonous water here, we can activate the Wind Altar of the region. There's one of these in every single region, and they must be activated for you to use wind magic in that area. I don't have wind magic yet, but still good to activate it for when I do. Back in Chersonese, it happens to be snowing, which is a surprise, but not a good one. Cold resistance is hard to come by and greatly decreases how quickly I can move around in the region. After a lot of resting and warming up by the fire, I finally make it back to Sirocco, where I promptly speak with Ido. This trainer hails from the Kazite pirate town of Orochi and has personal ties with the main leader of Vendaval Fortress. After bringing him a few minor items, he crafts me a special disguise I can use to sneak inside. He also gives me the special code word Nindiria, roughly meaning sea brother, that should let me move past the guards undetected. After suffering through a cold with major frostbite building up, I managed to make it to Vendaval Fortress. With a special Kazite mask and leather armor as a disguise, I spoke to Croc and offered him a drink. But, someone might have forgotten to bring Gabriel wine with him. Dang it. Well, this is often what it looks like when I actually play a stealth game, so kinda checks out. Croc and the guards get cleaned up quickly, and while you might think this whole quest is ruined, not entirely. We might not get a power coil from Croc or get to use the code word, but for whatever reason, Balira didn't hear the commotion below, and will still speak with me. I ask her to spare Cierzo, and she says yes, but only if I slay her husband for her. Wait, what? That can't be right. Oh, apparently it was a forced marriage where he more or less beat her. Emphasis on the more. Trying to make him see reason, she accidentally cursed him and bound their spirits together. Now it's our goal to find him and destroy whatever he's become so Balira the Witch can be free of her own spell. So we head off once again, this time towards Ghost Pass. Now you could also choose to just kill Balira, but doing so renders her quest, and more importantly, quest rewards, null and void. Actually, this isn't even out of the way as my other skill trees over here. Ghost Pass isn't much to write home about. In my bow run, the ghosts run killable, but since the place actually has spirit varnishes lying around, we make quick work of the undead spirits, and face off against the rusted enforcer. The long-forgotten protector of this fortress has become corrupted over time, and now seeks to destroy us. As you can see, my attack skills have a lot of damage, and debuffs tied to them. With execution to gain ground and get 3 times more damage on fallen foes, it's almost too easy. Beyond the fort, I managed to stumble into a shell horror. Here's where I'd like to explain one of my big beefs with the Greataxes. The weapon deals great stagger, right? Well, too great in fact. Because of how short the Greataxe is, any follow-up attack will not actually reach the enemy after they've been staggered backwards. This is not an issue with several other weapon types, but with Greataxes, you waste damage potential a lot. Honestly, the weapon's innate damage makes up for that, but there are times where it can mess with you, especially if you aren't aware of what's actually happening. And make sure to stop and activate the Chersonese Wind Altar before heading into the Cabal Tower. Inside is the Cabal Hermit, who teaches me his ancient ways of wind magic. This teaching once had a massive following, although sadly it was wiped from existence by the Scourge. This tree grants us increased weather defense, increased buffs from all boons, so more damage and stagger, wind infuse, which will imbue our weapon with extremely high impact and faster swing speed. You could also grab Conjure, but I didn't bother since I can't really use it this run anyway. It summons a ghost buddy to fight alongside you, which is kinda weak at times, yet really fun regardless. In the corner of this small area, we enter a cellar. Dispatching the 2 ghosts patrolling here lets us loot a few bottles of Gaberry wine. We can take these to an altar on the other side of the corruption zone and coat our weapon in the wine. Doing so will awaken the Ghost of Vinace to challenge you. He's oddly weaker than most normal ghosts, yet more importantly, his death rewards us with another Zar Stone. That's right, we now have 2 of the 5 possible Zar Stones in our possession. Inside the corrupted tombs here, we can see that Balira's husband has become an icy monster known as a Wendigo. Cannibalistic creatures who know nothing but an infinite hunger. The walls here got in my way a tad, but my damage was excellent. Halfway through, I ran towards the elemental so I could hit both with Flash Onslaught. Such a cool skill, packing ridiculous power. Then with a quick brace to stagger him back, the beast is defeated. The elemental's nothing, because Wind Infuse grants enough impact to stop him from hitting me entirely. And what do you know, this is the same corrupted tomb we needed to enter for a faction quest. Oliel found her way here as well, but seems she was cut off from the corruption by a magical barrier. While looking around in the tunnels for a way to break it, we meet Myrid, a talking skeleton, or more accurately, a talking skull. He explains that he leads the undead here, but they recently went mad from the increased corruption levels and hid his bones all over the cave. If we decide to help him, he offers to open the magical barrier because he's the one that set it up. Or we could crush his skull and instantly get through. But no, Myrid's actually one of the nicest and most noble characters we meet, so let's help the guy out. One of his arms is up on a ledge here, there's a leg further back near the water, place him onto his main body in the tunnels, and finally 2 skeletons guard his other arm. All reattached now, Myrid bolts off to undo his spell and open up the path. Once inside, it seems the altar where undead memories are bound has been smothered in corruption. There's no way for the skeletons to eat it all without going mad. Oliel attempts to destroy the overgrown cluster, but is deeply wounded in the process. I managed to take out the green ghosts quickly, but it was still too late. Oliel will die to corruption here, and there's nothing I can do. When all of a sudden, an immense pressure of light fills the corridor. Oliel stands upright once more. It seems Alat has reached out and saved her by replacing her corrupted body parts with holy light. She will never be the same again, but has also been granted incredible power. This crisis has been stopped just in the nick of time, thanks to her heroic sacrifice. With that quest all cleaned up, I made my way back to Vendaval Fortress to tell Balira the good news. She thanks me for my efforts and rewards me with the Preservation Backpack, our main bag for this run. It only has 75 capacity, which is a lot lower than the 110 of Mufino's, but any food you keep inside will never rot. Well, technically it will eventually, but the process is slowed by so much you basically have unlimited time on your food. Super useful since I need the rage buff easily acquired from alpha sandwiches to use half my skills. To finish up the side quest, I hunted down Rospa the pirate leader. He should have been easy, but I haven't repaired my equipment in a while and the axe broke on me mid-fight. Had just a little bit left in it to finish things off, thankfully. And actually the running attack on this is surprisingly useful. Vendaval has been completely eradicated with Belira the Witch left as the leader. And since we befriended her, she won't invade Sirocco, leaving me to return and reap my rewards. Due to our efforts, Burak will reward us with a key to the city, which we can now use to unlock a legacy chest hidden in Sirocco storage. I placed a copal chest piece in here on a different character. It's now been passed down through time and reborn as green copal armor. A really cool way to keep loot from other characters or improve certain items altogether. Green copal is important because of its stats. 3 protection, 30 ethereal resist, and 20 lightning resist. This piece alone makes us much more defensive against physical damage and to elemental types. Also has no negative stats, which is huge for the final setup. Finishing up Belira's questline also rewarded us with a power coil. Add that on top of the one I found in a random chest, and we have both required to unlock Mufino's trade backpack. Obviously I don't want to use it because I can't wear 2 backpacks at the same time, but later on in Caldera it's pretty much pointless to use anything but Mufino's for carrying samples efficiently. Might as well grab it now while I'm here. On the side of Conflux Mountain you could follow a path back towards the end of a cliff. Cross one rickety bridge and you're in Pirate's Hideout. Mad Captain's Bones guards a mini-quest here that we need to complete. He's no match for my power at this point, with a little lightning rag to give me that extra boost. Behind him is a parchment, speaking of something valuable hidden on a ship in the sand. This begins the treasure hunt quest, requiring you to go to several locations in the world in a specific order. We will slowly do that as we come to the spots, but for now let's head back to Monsoon. Speaking to Elanara and Elat rewards us with Purified, a passive skill granting plus 20 decay resistance. That, with our helmet and a boon, grants 80 decay resist on a regular basis. Tank is the only way to go. With no tasks set for another 3 days, I think it's time we take on the Jade Lich. Back in the Ziggurat, everything is already opened up from earlier and we can walk on in for the fight. Wind Infuse is one of the best weapon buffs you can use because most enemies can't even hit you when you use it. However, this is not the case for the Jade Lich. Instead, I went with Light Infuse not only because the Corrupted Lich is weak to lightning, but because he isn't all that hard to stagger to begin with. At least when you can get your hits in, that is. Predator Leap is an excellent tool to move in and get stagger started. Perfect Strike inflicts pain, dealing a lot of damage on its own. Then my job is to move around to the side while he teleports to avoid the green explosions and try and keep pressure on. My one strategy was to not use Flash Onslaught too soon. It inflicts confusion, which is huge, but also consumes the Discipline buff to do so. I can get that buff back when bracing against an attack, however it's easy to mess that up when facing magic. As you can clearly see, my decay resistance is really helpful here, and solid combos from the axe cut down even bosses in no time. One more set off just as he summons magic and the Lich is defeated. Looks like I forgot to even use the decay boon, funnily enough. I don't know how that happened. Since the Jade Lich isn't actually evil and only wanted to test our potential, he rewards us with special knowledge. He will perform for us an ancient lost art known as Zar Smithing, a type of weapon crafting literally no mortal can accomplish. With our 2 Zar stones, 1 Hackmanite and 1 Palladium, the Jade Lich crafts for us a Zar Greataxe, one of the highest damaging weapons in Outward with 79 physical damage, 55 impact, and an abysmal 0.8 attack speed. The slowest axe you can get your hands on, but hard to pass up on something that hits this hard. In order to test out my new weapon, I set off to finish the Purifier quest. This was started when I found that dead missionary deep in the swamp earlier on. Instead of speaking to Mofat, I just went to the tree in the far corner of the swamp. Inside Deadroot's cave, we set about slaying bandits. Well, that was quick. Let's take down this Immaculate instead. A few important features of this Zar axe is number 1, the damage is unmatched. Number 2, its abysmal attack speed makes it very difficult to use in many situations. One thing that can fix it is Wind Infuse, not only granting us bonkers levels of impact, but much faster attack speed. Thirdly, Zar items have infinite durability, allowing us to use our high-cost skills with no downside for the weapon. Perfectly balanced, as all things should be. On the table here, we read that an operation involving magic has been going on here for some time. Another floor down, we find a note talking about the kidnapped missionaries of Alat being murdered by some quote-unquote monsters. Take down this bandit with an aggressive chop, and there lies another note pointing towards Sorbor Academy as the mastermind behind this abduction scheme. Check out just how awesome Flash Onslaught is in a group. One of the only skills that attacks more than one enemy at a time, and it does so with the press of a single button. Then they're so weak you can wipe them out with minimal effort. Finally, at the bottom of this cave, we find yet another note talking about controlling test subjects and hidden information. Attached to the note is a key with the face of a Taunosaur carved into it. Up a floor, we use the key to unlock a secret corridor. Inside, everything begins to fall into place. Sorbor Academy has been kidnapping missionaries from the Holy Mission and using them as test subjects. Their goal is to find a way to control Immaculates. To do this, they lied and told the Immaculates they would free them of their hatred for Elat. Except Immaculates are so filled with rage for members of the Holy Mission that they keep killing all the test subjects brought in. After taking out the final enemy, we find a note written by the actual Immaculates themselves, stating that Jaeger Sullivan promised to free them of their rage. We can turn this info into someone at the Blue Chamber, or even confront Jaeger himself if we find him. This entire side quest directly affects how many enemies show up at the end of the main quest, but for right now, our only reward is the glowstone backpack slung behind this rail here. The bag is entirely useless, providing nothing but light that every bag can have with a mere lantern. Still, it has one of the cleanest backpack designs if you ask me, so I grabbed it just to store away in my house chest. In town, we can inform Damien Lockwell of the kidnappings, forcing him to increase the guards and mercenaries currently defending Monsoon. I also decided to finally buy my house here because I'd been forced to throw in Mephinos for a bit due to weight issues. Looting is really hard not to do with all this good stuff popping up everywhere. With my next quest being to head over to Berg for a council meeting between all the different cities, I headed there and promptly spoke with Matthias. He's with a small group of missionaries near the center ring of the city. Telling him about Jaeger Sullivan allows him to deal with the criminal activities. On another note, it also has a very weird outcome of having Matthias become a merchant. He sells items found in the swamp ziggurats, both very confusing and kinda cool at the same time. Well, it seems we got here a little too late. Oliel tells me that mercenaries from Levant blew up the archives and managed to kidnap several ambassadors. Zephyrien, the champion of Alat we met earlier on in this adventure, headed off on his own after hearing Sirocco's chamber lord had been kidnapped. He's been missing for 3 days now. My job is to go find him. Funny story though, I completely forgot about the ambassadors and to just let them stay kidnapped. That probably won't be important. Nope, not at all. Before leaving Berg, I quickly grabbed the wind totem here, as Enmerkar Forest totem is just in town. I guess the place is so old it may have been built back when the Cabal wind was running everything. Well, let's stop dilly-dallying and find Zephyrien. More of this lore is told later on in Caldera, so I'll go deeper into it then. But the gist is, Zephyrien is originally from the region of Caldera, specifically the city of Old Sirocco. An uprising has been stirring in that city because the nobles are abusing their power over the workers or general public. When the workers sent letters to Zephyrien asking for help, he told on them to the nobles. His idea was any uprising against peace would be wrong, but it backfired and the nobles began treating the workers even worse. Because of this, a certain someone of importance in Old Sirocco made a deal with the Prince of Levant and Dean of Sorbor Academy. 2 Tsar bullets infused with Scourge blood were crafted. Then a fake kidnapping was set up, knowing Zephyrien would be noble enough to try and save the ambassador. With that context in mind, we find Zephyrien deep within one of the forest hives. After clearing away the hive beast here, we notice Zephyrien appears to be dying. The trap, it seems, was successful, and instead of hostages, Zephyrien found men with weapons ready to take him down. As the fight began, Zephyrien was shot in the back by a Levantine firearm. The bullet created a hole now filled with glowing green veins in his body. Cyrene, of all people, the mercenary in my last outward run, who attempted to overthrow the king and queen of Levant, was the one who shot him, it seems. The said Tsar bullet, infused with Scourge blood, went right through his hefty armor and holy defenses. No one, not even a lat, can stop this process. And here we get to see possibly the saddest line of dialogue in Outward. He says, "Tell Soren, tell him I'm sorry. Tell him to watch his back." Zephyrien and Soren are the 2 notable champions of Alat, the most prestigious and therefore most powerful followers of the Holy Mission, the 2 becoming brothers with their shared responsibility. Sadly, this is where Zephyrien dies, taken down in a very disgraceful way due to a misunderstanding. Of course, the final dialogue is us pulling out the bullet and noticing its unique and deadly design. To make things even worse, the stupid bug ruined my sentimental moment by attacking me during dialogue. he will rue the day. But yeah, it's hard to explain how truly sad this moment really is when you understand the story from every angle. Well, Zephyrion's journey might have ended here, but ours is only beginning. We continue through the hive, clearing out the undead bees who live here. In the back, we find an exit leading into a valley of corruption. That's odd. There's nothing even here. Why would so much corruption congregate in this area? And then we see it. A dark beast just off in the distance. This is no hive lord that we've taken on before. No, this is the twisted and corrupted tyrant of the hive. A conglomerate monster of decayed body parts. With my buffs up and my battle axe ready to go, I completely obliterate this foe. You see, this setup has so much impact, enemies are staggered in just 1 or 2 hits, allowing me to block until the enemy finishes attacking and then wail on them as much as I like. The confusion and pain make things even easier once they're both afflicted, meaning that without fire, that usually helps me here, the big guy's barely even an ant under my foot. And this mini-boss is actually good to take out because he drops the World's Edge Greataxe. High impact, high stagger, fast attack speed, tons of durability, and deals decay damage. If I didn't already know how to make the Tsar Greataxe even better in the future, this would be a great option. Unfortunately, it's time we return to Monsoon and relay the tragic news of Zephyrien to Alat. Once there, however, a crowd of guards seems to have gathered in the street here. Upon investigation, it seems Oliel got in a spat with someone and outright killed him. Witnesses say it was self-defense, but Damien Lockwell, being as uninviting to the holy mission as he can be, is investigating it for murder. Time for me to get involved, as always. I tried to bribe him with 100 silver, but he didn't like that idea at all. Instead, I just told him Elat would stop protecting the city, so he reluctantly agreed to free her, admitting it was obvious to everyone she was just using self-defense. Oliel now free, she tells us she was defending her friends against one of the older disciples who didn't like that they were doubting Elat. In self-defense, she picked him up and threw him against the wall, claiming she didn't know it would kill him as her newfound holy strength was just too much. This serves the purpose of showing us Oliel is having doubts about following Alat. She heads off into the desert of Abrassar to find answers. Knowing we're now in trouble without Zephyrien to help us, Alat offers a choice between 2 blessings. I chose Divine Assistance, reducing my stamina and mana costs by 10%. Holy Mission as a faction quest in general is just stacked when it comes to passive buffs, and this one's really nice for the reduced stamina cost alone. Our next task is to head after Oliel, as Alat believes she's on to an important discovery. Stopping in Berg really quick, I purchased the Mist Boon from Cyril Turnbull before making my way to the desert. In the slums of Levant, we can find Oliel, who gives us 3 options on where to look first. Old Levant, Stone Titan Caves, or the Garden. I'm already fully aware that we need to head towards the Stone Titan Caves for the next quest. However, I had this hunch that a tidbit of lore I've never fully understood could be explained by surveying the Garden. This, of course, is referring to the small fortress not too far from Levant, where an entire garden is somehow growing just fine, where literally nowhere else in the desert has anything but sand. I had a small encounter with one of the beast golems here, where I once again got frustrated by the Greataxe's ability to slice right past the enemy, missing him entirely. Forces me to take damage, but he got taken out soon after. Oliel is just outside the garden here, and in fact, she does answer the question I'd been asking myself. Oliel explains that Elat has nothing to do with the garden. It's kept alive by a protective spell still active after the Great River of Abrassar was diverted away. The Garden Lich used to feed on a ley line under Stone Titan Caves. It was destroyed when the Scourge appeared. No answer to how the Garden Lich died exactly, but it sounds like the ley line disappearing did him in. While we're here, do you guys think I can take on the Guardian of the Compass? Still asking myself that very question as I took out the additional golems here, I just wasn't sure. He's by far one of the hardest foes in Outward, and I don't have the Wind Altar activated yet either. Ah, screw it, let's give it a shot. Using an Ethereal Varnish to exploit his weakness, I buffed up as much as I could. One hit cut my health in half, and the other golem managed to see me as well. Nope, not fighting this guy and another golem. Not happening. Clearly terrified, I ran for my life. Just on the edge of the stairs here, the golems managed to get caught for a few seconds, and the lesser golem lost attention. Thank goodness, I can try this again a bit more fairly. Bringing the Guardian as far back into this open space as possible, round 2 begins. While fighting him, you might notice I stick to a consistent strategy of blocking and circling to the right. This tactic is useful for a lot of enemies as it gives you just a tad more time before they begin attacking again. However, it's even more valuable for sword golems, as their second swing will often go right over your head if you circle fast enough. Golems can quickly reduce your impact resistance due to their powerful attacks. This saves you as much as possible, letting you have more stamina and block much longer. The Zar Axe is incredibly slow, this is true, but once confusion is applied, I feel more than confident in every swing. Execution does a number when he goes down, and just 2 attacks leads him into another stagger, where we can finish him off. Okay, that went surprisingly well, all things considered. Scary start, but once we had him in a nice spot, the damage speaks for itself. Had to go take care of that annoying pest who ruined my battle there, and he was unlucky enough to get stuck. Only 2 hits to take him down. Nice. Behind this garden is a bridge leading to the wind altar for this region. Just a few sharks guarding the area, and we can now use wind infuse again. Down in Stone Titan Caves, we face off against the last acolyte. Aside from a few wall issues, he's a piece of cake. The various tables you read in this cave explain that the Cabal of Wind group destroyed the Olay line here while attempting to kill Alat in the past. This backfired big time and instead created Discourage while turning Alat into living thought, or essentially a god. Down near the final runed tablet, we take on a High Monk Giant. Actually, he takes on us, as he was way further out of his cave than usual. Typically, Oliel fights him with you, but nope, he was just after me. Not the best place to fight at all, really, but we still come out on top. With the information here, Oliel wants to learn more. She asks you to find a way to transcribe a stone tablet she found written in an old language. We grab the Sunfall Axe, taking up more space in my extremely overweight backpack, and walk back to town. Before I leave this region, there is one more thing I'd like to do. Deep in the Electric Lab is a puzzle holding a valuable reward I'd like to get my hands on. Man, it doesn't get any better than that right there. Predator leap into a group and pop them all while their guards down. Gosh, it's a beautiful sight to see. Jumping off the secret doorway on the elevator leads us to a Thunderbolt Golem. Poor guy fell victim to an ambush because, well, he's staring at a wall. Bad news though, I forgot to pull the lever, which I came down here for. Had to walk all the way back up and around just to get here again. Deeper in, we can cut down some mantis shrimps and collect a free coil lantern. A new light, which I can keep on forever because it basically never loses durability. Super nice for someone like me, who constantly forgets to turn the thing off. With our elevator now turned the right way, we can exit at the top and take out 3 golems here. Each wears headgear, magically preventing a contraption from working in the lab. It's safe to say they aren't nearly as difficult as the Guardian we took down before. Looks like 3 hits for the first one, 3 hits for the second one too, oh geez. And oh look at that, 3 for the third as well. Thought maybe we could pull off a 2-shot on one of these, but nah, not quite yet. With the 3 defeated, we can now activate the magical device inside and unlock the 3rd Zar Stone. Only 2 left to go for the max amount, although technically we don't need all of them. Before leaving the desert, I stopped by the wrecked ship in the center of the sandy dunes. The manticore guarding it stood as no minor threat. Too bad I'm throwing out more damage than ever before, and other than Perfect Strike never connecting like I want it to, the rest handles him beautifully. I might be a Greataxe main now, guys. It's kind of winning me over right now, not gonna lie. Inside the cabin, we take out a shark who's trapped or was born here. How the heck is this thing alive? Behind him is another note for our treasure hunt quest. It mentions overcoming a hornet's nest in a forest. Seeing that hive man corpse next to the note there, I know exactly where to look. Paying the Sorbor Caravaner 150 silver has him transcribe the rune tablet Oliel gave us. Before we bring the information back to her in Monsoon, I made a quick stop by the hives. Off to the side, you'll find a small hive trap. Enter, and it's pretty accurate to its name. One hive lord and minion ambush me with a Greataxe, once again missing completely just as I'm about to get the kill. A few flashy moves later, and I have miraculously avoided infection from the swarm of bees. Stop chasing me and just blow up already. The next clue in our treasure hunt quest lies here, mentioning claws and fangs in a poisonous swamp. That can only mean one place, or so I thought. Turns out I was quite clueless about this clue and ended up scouring every corner of the swamp for it. My first thought was to check the reptilian lair under the large hollow tree. Man, I really thought the Razorhorn Stegosaur had more health than that, but you know, I'm not really mad about it at all. A few more Stegosaurs dispatched, and apparently I am in the wrong place. Nothing but dino eggs here. My next thought was maybe it's hidden in the upper section of the hollow tree. Making my way past Phytosaurs, almost dying to a Taunosaur, and then barely defeating an Alpha Taunosaur, we hit a dead end once again. Well, shoot, where the heck is this then? A brief moment of research later, and yeah, there was no way I was gonna find this one. It's in the Stegosaur Burrow. I'd forgotten this place even existed, since you go here maybe 1 time in 10 runs. You'll see a small cave off to the side as you head towards the Spire of Light. A better marker to look out for would be the 15 different Stegosaurs prowling around. At least they all drop predator bones for some delicious bouillon, as long as I survive, of course. Huzzah! Finally the clue. Technically I cheated, but we don't have to talk about that. It mentions my final destination being left at the location of the Pirate's Legacy. Pull a lever in some old docks left over in the desert, and his treasure will be uncovered. That one's a lot easier to find, thankfully. In Monsoon, I and O'Leal speak with Alat about the runed translation. It details the demise of Alat and how he created the Scourge when he refused to die, splitting his mind into living thought and decaying body into monstrous beings. Apparently, this news has spread, and several missionaries are thinking about leaving the Holy Mission as a result. They no longer trust Alat. Soren, me, and O'Leal are sent to win them back. Just along the main path through the swamp is a path leading into a lotus flower. Entering, we meet with 3 missionaries. Your dialogue options here determine not only the outcome of this quest, but your rewards. Failing means O'Leal leaves the Holy Mission and you don't get the good rewards. The correct options are 1, then 2, then 2 again, trying to get these 3 to see reason as to why Alat did what he did. Soren, of course, is just there being the absolute boss that he is. After rolling a nat 20 in Persuasion, the trio agrees to return to their posts. For handling things the peaceful way, O'Leal grants us a passive skill called Acceptance. This boosts both of our weather defenses by 8, a small amount, but actually makes a huge difference once we get to Caldera. Because the Holy Mission has lost one of its most valuable members, and because I've proved myself worthy time and time again, Alat elevates me to the rank of Champion, skipping Templar altogether and standing side by side with Soren as the most powerful Holy Mission members in existence. Alat also grants me a passive skill called Sanctified Protection, offering 2 protection or physical defense. Oh, and we also got the Candleplate armor to signify our rank, although it's not quite what my build is leaning toward. Time to rest for a few days and receive new orders soon. Soren managed to discover a few spies from Levant and the town inn, but they've since gone missing. Not even Alat can see them. I guess some warriors of the Blue Chamber recently disappeared as well. Considering both parties are at war, we need to go stop either from doing something that can't be undone. Warrior Monk Galera saw one of the Monsoon guards cleaning swamp stains off his armor recently. After threatening him with the power of a champion, the guard reluctantly tells me he often takes prisoners to a secluded cell somewhere in the old ruins for Lockwell. The ruins are not hard to find, taking up a large space in the center of the marsh. However, what cellar he speaks of, I'm not sure. The place is completely broken down as far as I'm aware. But wait a second, seems there's a side path leading into the swamp water here. In the cellar, Levantine bandits ambush me and quickly regret their incredibly poor decision. Wait, why is a marsh bandit working with them as well? Either way, you really want to pick a fight with the guy holding an axe bigger than your entire body? Freeing the 2 agents allows them to relay that the Blue Chamber and Sand Corsair bandits of the desert were sent to torture the duo for information. They also happen to mention that there's a secret entrance into Levant near the back side if I ever need to sneak in. Foreshadowing pretty hard there if you can't tell. Alat is furious upon hearing this information, as Monsoon was supposed to stay out of the war entirely, yet they've brought it to our doorstep. He states nothing is more important than stopping this ignorant war. We must convince leaders of each party to agree to a sit-down. Risa agrees after receiving 100 silver, while the other 2 are not so easily swayed. Marching all the way over to the Cabal Wind Temple, I slay a few shell horrors and bring their chitin back to Gabriella, which leaves Sagard Battleborn. I never knew this, but apparently you can offer him one of our precious Czar stones in return for his cooperation. Absolutely not. Do you know how hard those things are to find? Instead, we challenge him to a duel. Win, and he'll do as we say. Sagard is feared as one of the most powerful warriors in Aurai. Not nearly as strong as Soren, because no one is, but a man who's cost Levant a good many lives. He dual wields large marble axes, charging aggressively with forceful slams. I counter with the same and show this brute just how powerful a champion of the Holy Mission really is. My Czar axe is unmatched, leading to a flawless victory. With the 3 main leaders of Blue Chamber's armies in agreement, Alat channels his thoughts into my mind. I am needed immediately in the desert. Apparently, Soren is standing between the 2 armies, stopping them from going at it for the time being. A civil war is happening in Levant, and I must see it stopped as quickly as possible. In the desert, we find several escapees who fled from Levant just in time. Just over by this oasis, they inform me that a coup is taking place in Levant, leaving the palace completely closed up. I can take the secret path in, but this requires a key. Before heading to the secondary entrance, I quickly spoke with Paul the Wanderer. He stands idly by outside of town and relays the same information. I need a key, but where to get one? And I'm gonna be honest with you right now, I don't really remember what happened next. Somehow, I ended up slaying a bunch of bandits near the Sandrose Cave, soon after battling the Sandrose Horror as well. Sorry, Soren, I know you're holding off 2 armies right now by yourself. I just need a quick break to fight this monster if you don't mind. Thanks, buddy. Wind Infused was on cooldown, leaving me to use a Spirit Varnish instead. Just using all my skills in a row makes the guy look like a chump, and with that, another mini-boss has been taken care of. Oh yeah, back to the important stuff. Bloody Alexis guards the passageway in, a silver armored mercenary with a giant club. She actually uses wild strikes like I can. However, I prove much more efficient with the ability. Execution proving to be a brutal skill once again for the follow-up. Inside the city, I still wasn't all that sure how I would acquire a key. Ended up being much easier than I expected, as even the guards here have been starving due to the war. Offer them a little food, and they grant me a key. Might want to find some more disciplined guards. With the secret passageway unlocked, I enter the palace and find Yazan and Cyrene have overthrown the king and queen. This treason shall not stand. I once again forgot the correct dialogue options and didn't manage to get Yazan on my side. I'm trying, man, I promise. I just can't remember the right ones. The duo managed to actually hit me a lot, unfortunately. But the Greataxe lets me use such powerful skills, it really isn't fair. My bow run was tough because any encounter with more than one opponent means trouble. Here, though, I can actually attack both targets simultaneously. One final execution brings down Cyrene, who I can't forget to spit on for good measure. After all, she is the assassin who took out Zephyrien. May her lifeless corpse rot in the sandy desert to be forgotten. The queen is taken back to Monsoon where she can be cured. I decided to make the journey back on my own instead, as I need to wrap up a few dead ends here. With the citizens back in town, I speak with the mercenary trainer and buy 2 skills. Fast maintenance lets me repair my armor faster, and armor training, the most important one, has the negative effects on armor. I only have negatives on my boots, but less is a welcome passive to have. Then I spoke with Smooth the Tailor to purchase the Warm Boon. Not a fun skill to forget when cold weather starts popping up more often than not. Deep within the dark tunnels of the slide, we can lower the water levels and access a small haven where the Executioner bug resides. This green bug has defeated many a warrior, seen by the wolf dagger sticking out of his husk. No time to waste as we avoid his poisonous tongue. With pain applied from Perfect Strike, he's as good as dead in only 3 total hits. Back up in the more dry area of this cave, we can cut our way through a few bandits and enter Old Levant. Luke the Pearlson hangs out somewhere around here. Maybe in here? No, this is kinda odd. I know he prowls around this building, but for the life of me, I can't seem to Oh, hey, look, there he is. Must have walked right by me, what the heck. A dangerous mercenary who hits really hard with fast strikes. Add in some confusion, and he fell for brace. Of course he did. Feral Strikes is actually super easy to whiff altogether, I'm noticing, but one more hit should do the trick. Exiting Old Levant and heading left a bit leads me to the old abandoned docks. Inside, we look around for a lever behind some boxes. Give it a quick pull, and the treasure is ours to claim. That old pirate managed to stash a Czar stone hidden in plain sight. The tricky devil. I have to thank him though, as that grants us 4 Czar stones in total, with just 1 more to go. Taking the long way around, I sidetracked into the hives. Tons of bugs to take out here, but further on in we meet the Virulent Hive, a poisonous creature of death and decay. Pick off the little guys first, watch this guy go flying, and that's that. If you think you're getting out of this fight without a hive infection, think again. Back in town, we speak with the blacksmith and give her 2 of our precious Czar stones. In return, she can craft us a pair of Czar boots, the only person in existence with the knowledge left to do so, granting us a highly defensive set of unbreakable black boots. Now with this full armor set, we're highly resistant to every element except for cold, which you rarely encounter anyway. Plus we have really high physical defense now as well. Worth the hard work to get so many Czar stones, that's for sure. Now we're all the way back in Monsoon after more fights than I can even describe. Man, the swamp is just filled with deadly encounters at every corner, isn't it? In town, we speak with Alat where peace is brought to the tribes once again. For my effort in every step along the way, Alat grants me Peacemaker's Elixir for 20 health, stamina, and mana, alongside our 5th and final Czar Stone. We've officially acquired every possible Czar Stone left in the land. As a member of the Holy Mission, Alat takes me aside with the other missionaries and requests that some of us give up our lives to save the Queen of Levant. In order to prevent another Scourge outbreak, some of us will need to absorb the corruption from her as she becomes a living thought, just like Alat. Sadly, this will eventually kill every member involved. I ask Alat what he would have me do, and he explains that my rank of champion is needed on the front lines to fight back the wave of monsters headed this way. I accept, not really reluctantly at all, as the other option sounds much worse. The Scourge have made their way into town. It's up to us to beat them back. The really cool aspect of this battle is you can alter it in several ways. Remember the Purifier quest we did early on? Heading into the Dead Tree and finding Soror Academy experimenting on Immaculates? Well, if you do that quest, 2 things will happen. Number 1, more guards will show up here at the end to help fight, as Lockwell sent for mercenaries when the plot was discovered. Number 2, 2 Immaculates will be missing from the battle. Yes, the 2 we defeated in that tree early on won't be here, as we obviously already took them out. Basically, we did this quest so well that the guards can defeat the monsters without our help. Soren, Sagard, Simeon, some Wolf Knights, and Palladium armored guards of Monsoon all band together and take these monsters down. All of us ganging up on the Butcher of Men, he stands no chance and is defeated along with his army of green behemoths. Queen Calixa is now turned into living thought, and we receive the Candleplate Helm and Palladium Greathammer as our reward. Our faction quest is finally completed, and the world is back to normal once again. Well, whatever equates to normal around here anyway. Before taking a few nights off to rest, I crafted marshmallow and tartines and alpha sandwiches, as they're going to come in handy for the next phase of this adventure. With our faction quest done, Abrasar Desert wiped clean of all dangerous monsters, let's head towards Cierzo and do the same there. On the way, I did have a few stops to make though. In the minor ziggurat near the Spire of Light, I took out more pesky Taunosaurs who seem to be hatching by the thousands. Behind them is the Altered Gargoyle, a poisonous version of the stone constructs in Caldera. Most opponents get defeated in a few swings, as I have the tools to take down anything. Gargoyles are the exception, however. They have extremely high physical resistance, impact resistance, and are immune to my most powerful tool, Confusion. Add in the fact that this gargoyle is placed in an extremely dark cave with little room to maneuver around. It's an uphill battle. I can't quite get a good footing at first, then one good predator leap opens him up for a few seconds, only for the axe to once again move past the enemy when I try a combo. Dang it, so easy to do that when enemies can maneuver around more. You can tell how high my stamina is at this point, with plenty to both attack and dodge at will. Perfect strike for a clean sweep, and this Phytosaur wanted a piece of me after as well. You're no gargoyle, I know that much. Entering the dreaded Spire of Light, it's time to take down the Light Mender. These lightning minions are no issue. I just so happen to bring their main weakness, the World Edge Greataxe. Oh yeah, baby, this one is way faster. So much easier to recover from heavy attacks. I'm tempted to use this one instead. With a Dark Varnish on the World Edge, I buff up into lightning resistance and as much damage as I can muster. Got the pain applied instantly, quickly add in the confusion in between the lightning bursts, and one gorgeous use of brace to give me an opening. Wail on him as much as physically possible with execution as a follow-up. Ah, dang it, everyone's dodging my feral strikes. What's up with that? Oh well, this axe is so fast even without wind infuse that it's over soon after. That was incredibly fun. I love the Zar axe, but when decay damage is optimal, it's hard to pass on this beauty right here. After threatening to beat up the Lich every week for an eternity, he agrees to leave humanity alone until I eventually die. Little does he know, that will never happen. Ha ha ha. Almost at the exit to Chersonese now, I made one last pit stop. The Jade Quarry. The place is as dark and dreary as it was last time I was here. Oh, fighting two Taunosaurs at once, you don't survive that every day. The only reason we're here is to hunt down the annoying Troglodyte, which isn't usually easy with melee weapons because he sprints away from you into poisonous water. As luck would have it, I caught him just as he was running from some dinos, and with a quick swing of the axe, he's down for the count. Master Trader Boots this time, that's interesting. Ah yes, back in Chersonese, where what the heck, it's snowing again! Actually, with our increased weather defenses, it doesn't really matter that much. To finish up this region, I need to enter the Voltaic Hatchery. Conveniently enough, it's the testing grounds where the Light Mender used to study. Again, World Edge is hardly fair against these simple fellows. Adding in wind infuse this time, it's just insane. The Golden Matriarch is a scary foe. Not so much when you come back with a full build, but she is deadly early on. Try and do something, I dare you. Oh, you fell for the brace trap. These enemies are so gullible. It gives me free damage, come on, get a grip. Teleport away and Ninja Slice. Epic finish as always. Oh, look at that, it's actually not winter anymore, and we get to see the seasons change. This Wendigo tried to claw me on the way home. Oh man, Brace makes combat way too easy, doesn't it? Become immune to the next attack, reduce their stagger to 50%, and then get several free attacks in, usually ending with them dead. You know what would be scary? Seeing an enemy get the Brace skill. Yeah, I'll just be grateful for the power, thanks anyway. Back in Cierzo, there's just one thing left to do here. Because our faction quest is completed, we could take this boat back to the starting island and face off against the Ebony Warrior, Zar Knight. Opting for World's Edge because Zar versus Zar is not a good match. If you don't mind me saying so, this is the most beautiful place to have a duel. The water is glistening while we dance along the sandy beach in brilliant sunlight. His impressive armor stands strong against my attacks, but my powerful stagger knocks him over before he can get a grip. Feel kinda bad for this guy. I get he probably wants the challenge, but how cool would it be to gain him as a skill and summon the Zar warrior to fight alongside you? Pokemon, but it's just a dude who you high-five before entering battle together. We give him the respectful death he so desperately wishes for and take that juicy loot back to town. Since we just looted 6 power coils, that reminds me. I think the water purifier breaks in town after your faction quest. Idios van Vanus, the engineer who speaks like a redneck, I guess. Some rats chewed their way through the mechanisms, and this water isn't safe to drink anymore. Give him 2 power coils though, and it gets fixed right up. You get another coil lantern here by helping him, and yeah, that's really all there is to it. Fun little mini quest before leaving for Hermatin. Funny thing is, I actually haven't been here yet. That means Rust and Vengeance never started. The Golem springs to life as soon as I arrive though, with the Rust Lich threatening impending doom upon Hermatin. Can't forget to touch the rune after it breaks down so we can access the dungeons. I've done that before, and trust me, it's frustrating to no end. Before we go about saving these people, let's get even stronger. The Speedster Trainer has a passive that grants plus 25 stamina. I may have the most stamina possible on a character by this point. Then we go ahead and grab Metabolic Purge for corruption resistance before purchasing the house in town where we can rest for a nice sleeping buff. If we're going to do this vast quest, we will first need the ability to use Wind Infuse in the region. The Wind Altar here is far down south, behind I think a cloud of corruption, the green stench of decay left behind by Scourge Beasts. Most new players are terrified of this stuff, not knowing how to get rid of it, when in reality, every alchemist in each of the towns sells potions to cure it. With the altar activated, we continue on down through the beautiful Mana Lake and enter into the destroyed test chambers. This area is more broken down than most parts of the train dungeon, causing significant spikes in heat. At this point though, just drinking water is enough to make us completely immune to hot weather conditions, especially since Zar boots have some defense against it as well. After dispatching the many golems here, we pull a lever unlocking the previous area just across. Plenty of trogs attempt to stop us, but each is like 2, maybe at most 3 hits to take out. Zar weapons are weapons of mass destruction if the enemy doesn't have heavy armor. We grab the train key A next to this broken golem so we can activate the trains down below. Taking the elevator down, we meet with a sword golem and freezing cold. I don't have complete immunity to cold unfortunately, but with a reasonably short fight it won't matter too much. Unlocking the gate here, we face off against the liquid cooled golem. Gotta watch for his explosions to get summoned around him as a defensive attack, but shortly after we can prevent him from summoning any more magic until he's decommissioned. Using the train key A, we reactivate the mana trains at this console and take a ride over to the manufacturing facility. Plenty of Scourge to comb through here, the most notable being a Greater Grotesque. An unusual Scourge variant unique to these dungeons, and an elite one at that. Surprisingly, the fight didn't go all that well for me. Without any mana for Wind Infuse, my attacks are sluggish and tough to get in. Meanwhile, this opponent has high amounts of stagger on his far-reaching arms. With the Greataxe deciding to attack behind me instead of towards the big guy, I'm inflicted with extreme poison. Flash Onslaught is often a free save skill that gives me just enough of a chance to reposition. And with the little guy now down, the mini-boss follows soon after. In my absence of thought, I ate a raw Vibra egg just lying on this dead body here, and contracted indigestion. One of the worst diseases possible as it prevents you from eating food, which I need regularly for buffs. And then these grotesques up ahead sandwich me into a pool of corruption for some free hits. You might be wondering why exactly do I not take a lot of damage even when getting hit at various times. Well, protection's a very useful stat to have on your armor. Rather than reducing damage by a percentage, it subtracts a flat amount, meaning that if enemies don't hit me with more damage than I have protection, it's completely nullified and I take 0 damage whatsoever. And a surprising amount of enemies can't harm you at about 15-ish protection. Taking down the last few beasts here, I snag myself a gemstone key C. The first of 4 acquired. Leaving outside, I let down this rope to unlock a shortcut back up here if I ever need it. Now heading back to town as my pack is very full. Around the side of Hermatin is an old theater area where 2 powerful Scourge have set up camp. Even a Sublime Shell can't do much damage to us. That's awesome. The centaur-looking monsters are really cool, although not challenging at all if you can stop them from casting. Inside the maze of corridors, we take out golem after golem until we reach another decommissioned red golem. By his side is the ever-important warehouse key. Guarding my next train stop is the Lightning Dancer. Beast golems can be kinda weird and sometimes avoid damage altogether, even though the axe goes right through them. So I couldn't take out the little dude before Big Boy started barking. Once he was dealt with though, the Yellow Fiend was toast. The major advantage of a two-handed weapon is you really can block as much as you like, letting you stay in close for quick counters and avoid damage much more consistently than dodging can offer. On the train once again, we travel over to the crumbling loading docks. Even more golems to destroy here as it was one of the main hubs where they were originally created. If I'm correct, this is the station they would pack the different golems into train cars and wheel them out to different regions. The place is completely filled with corruption now, but it must have been something before everything went to crap. Through the ominous boss door, we face the Scourge monster, a giant overwhelmed by corruption and turned into something horrifying. I dealt a little too much damage, forcing out the backpack crate much earlier than usual. Running attacks prove very useful for picking off the floating fellow, and then with a perfect lunge forward, one of the 3 major bosses lies dead at my feet. Of course, the Rust Lich calls in bragging about his power and such, and we'll get to you soon enough. We can now collect Gemstone Key D and head back to Harmattan as I need more food cooked up. The closest entrance back into the dungeons is through the living quarters. A Kazite Admiral guards this site, and he actually managed to counter my Predator leap. So perfect, I really wasn't even that mad. Greataxe v Greataxe, I happen to have the better one. Just a few more Kazites to clean up on our way to the Trog Key. Not sure if we're gonna need the Mushroom Merchant for this run, but can't hurt to grab it just in case. Back on the train, we make our way to the compromised Mana Transfer Station. There's a section of elevators here leading to the Elevator Key. I have to say, the more time I'm spending with this Greataxe, the more I'm beginning to love how it works. The chance of missing is higher than I would like, but when you can combo the attacks and skills in a good order, the fights look so good. To the point where enemies get no attacks in whatsoever and you fold them in half. Well, let's see if a Sublime Shell will be a problem. Like, keep away from the Elemental there long enough and we can get him taken out. Alright, that leaves the Chromatic Arcane Elemental. Mostly a threat at long range and can't really do anything when I bum rush it. Ooh, a nice potion for loot, thank you very much. Activating the console there unlocks elevators leading to the Gemstone Key B. This one's better guarded than it looks with what appears to be a broken down MK Golem. How the heck Scourge managed to break the Colossal Tank we may never know. Heading outside spits us into the lower section of the Antique Plateau. Just a short hike towards the center of the map, and oh sweet, a Fire Elemental. This one is part of a special puzzle in the region, meaning he's guaranteed to drop more particles than most. Very important for some enchanting here soon. With the warehouse key we collected earlier, the old warehouse can now be accessed. I'm always intrigued by this part of the underground dungeon. While other sections seem more important, this is the most heavily guarded cave probably in the entire game. We see several Immaculates on our way down, 2 even being located right next to each other. This duo is not to be trifled with, at least not usually. Through the power of Elat, I have become more than a mere adventurer. I am a champion of death to the Scourge, bringing my axe down swiftly onto their accursed heads. Gonna have to up the challenge here soon, I'm starting to yawn over here. Even more Immaculates mopped up in quick succession, we find ourselves up against the MK Golem. I went with the Obsidian Scourge Repair Matrix, making him weaker to lightning. The Drilling Sword, which inflicts pain and attacks rather quickly. Then finally, the Corruption Vents, because corruption doesn't matter hardly at all when you're prepared. Winded Views would be crazy good here as always, but instead I chose an Ethereal Varnish. All golems are weak to the purple magic, and the Zarax's physical damage becomes pretty lackluster against metal giants such as this. You'll notice that when I'm not using attack skills, I usually swing once and follow up with 2 high-powered attacks. The Greataxe combo, specifically the normal then heavy, grants 3 attacks instead of just 2. You can trap yourself in this animation if not careful, but when timed correctly, it's nearly as powerful as attack skills themselves. The second major obstacle has been bulldozed through with Gemstone Key A as my reward. Rust Lich, beware. I'm headed straight for you, buddy. In the Forgotten Research Laboratory, we reach a door sealed by magic runes. Placing all 4 keys into the contraption and pulling the lever unseals the corridor leading to the Rust Lich. Our progress has allowed Scourge monsters to invade this area, because as per usual, the fighting never ends. A special variant of the Sublime Shell got his hands on a key we need, which was a poor decision on his part. Somehow managed to kill him with Bleed from Feral Strikes as the Elemental jumped in to help him out. Bleed might just be a low amount of damage, but it isn't nothing. Next floor up, we encounter the dreaded multi-golem encounter. 2 beast golems and a sword golem guarding a lever we need to pull. This is always a mess because I never know how to correctly engage so many opponents at once. Chop this one up to luck as my skills managed to hit both opponents exactly when I needed them to. I always forget how many enemies there are guarding the Rust Lich. Golems everywhere of every size and shape. Even a few elementals roam around here, which one just happens to drop a purifying quartz. I need one for enchanting, and without it my upgrades would need to wait a lot longer. The rusted mechanic leader begs for his life as I buff up in every possible way. After everything I went through to get here, no chance I'm turning back now. For this fight, I decided to add in a Gaberry wine buff. This drink decreases mana cost, which I always thought was better suited for mages, but what I did not know is it also increases physical defense. The problem is, it is still wine, making you unstable or reducing your impact resistance. This doesn't affect me much here, but in other encounters it prevents me from blocking as long. So it's kinda tough to know when I should and should not use it. Being one of the easier bosses in Outward, I wasn't afraid here. Just take out the golems to bring his barrier down and get as many hits in as you can. My confidence was slightly misplaced however, as gank fights can quickly make a turn for the worst. All of a sudden, I find myself at half health and on fire, slowly being eaten away with every passing second. Running over my backpack, I managed to sling it up over my shoulder and gulp down a health potion. Thought I might finish things, but I was much too far away from him. Thankfully, I do have hefty resistance to everything here. Ethereal, lightning, fire, physical. The armor setup has me more than prepared. Take out the golems one more time and the Rust Lich gets executed. The golems do manage to rise up once more, but without a master to guide them, they can only watch as I break them apart for good. We destroy the phylactery, tethering this being to the mortal realm, and receive his armor as he complains in ghostly form. Turns out, the Rust Lich was living just under Harmattan the entire time, giving us a secret entrance directly into the main tower. Speaking to Headmaster Raoul and telling him what we've accomplished, he could barely care at all. Throws some money and a few particles my way, clearly not understanding how close he was to losing everything. No matter, we didn't do this job for recognition. We do it for the loot, of course. With 2 major quests now completed, I would like to take some time and enchant my gear. However, I need several materials to do so. I set out to free the Trog merchant, unlocking her cages in several places. While walking to and from, I snatched as many pieces of Dreamer's Root as I could. It grows around the world and is very common, but everything's hard to find when you need it. Finally, the Trog merchant is completely freed for good, letting me purchase 6 tourmaline from her. 5 for later, and 1 for enchanting right now. At an alchemy kit, we can combine 2 Dreamer's Root and 1 fire particle to make Monarch Incense. With plenty of materials, we can create 12 in total. Then purchasing an enchanting table and pillars from the mage in town, we can enchant our armor. Point the table due north, 2 pillars on one side, 2 pillars on the other side. Slot the incense into the pillars and activate the table with your armor inside. Done correctly, all 3 pieces of our armor are now enchanted with Aegis, adding a total of 4 additional protection for an absurd amount of physical defense. I actually messed up here as I was gonna do Spirit of Berg on the chest piece, which would have granted -10 stamina cost. That was originally the plan, I merely forgot at the time. No biggie, we've got tons of stamina to work with anyway. Now we need to work on the weapon. Throwing 2 Dreamer's Root and 1 Ethereal Particle into an alchemy kit crafts Pale Beauty Incense. With one of those, an Ethereal Particle, Tourmaline, and Purifying Quartz, we can create upper tier Sylphina Incense. Step 1 finished, but we need to actually go somewhere else to activate this enchant. Before traveling to Sirocco with the Caravaner, I picked up the Nightmare passive for less burnt mana after sleeping. Probably should have grabbed it much earlier, but I didn't think about it then. Back in our original region, once again, we set out for Ghost Pass. When the table is correctly set up in this specific dungeon, you can enchant any melee weapon with Poltergeist, removing 50% of the item's physical damage and converting it to raw instead. We're going to talk about this more in a sec, as it's the main reason I did this run in the first place. Quickly traveling over to the Hallowed Marsh, I look for any alpha Taunosaurs guarding their nests. These behemoths drop alpha meat, which I can craft more sandwiches with. Okay, so what was the entire point of this run? About a month or 2 before this video will be posted, Outward received a very small update. It came out of nowhere really and changed a few minor things. Poltergeist as an enchant used to convert 30% of your weapon's physical damage to raw. It was greatly buffed up to 50% and tagged with a perk that repairs your weapon's durability over time. Since Zar weapons are unbreakable, that last part isn't too important right now, but 50% into raw makes Poltergeist the single best weapon enchant in Outward, while it used to be just okay. Why, you ask? Raw damage, unlike any other source, is completely unblockable. This means no matter what kind of resistances enemies have, raw damage always cuts right through to the overall HP. Also consider that the Zar Axe holds the highest amount of raw damage with this enchant at 40. Very strong moving forward, as arena bosses and stronger enemies in Caldera sport some heavy resistances. And since the enchant was new-ish, I designed this run to show it off. With alpha meat in hand, I stopped by Monsoon to craft 43 marshmallow tartines that offer the best stamina boost you can get. So far, we've taken out every mini-boss in all the regions except Enmerkar Forest and Caldera. Before starting the final questline of our journey, let's hunt down the few remaining Scourge in our beloved forest. Deep within the face of the Ancient's cave, behind molten rock and frozen tunnels, hides the first cannibal. With Fire Imbue ready to go, we see just how strong the new Poltergeist enchant really is. One of the strongest mini-bosses in the base game is cut down in just a few swings. The hunter has become the hunted, with this frozen monster no longer preying on the ill-prepared adventurer. Behind Berg, within some old tunnels, we find the Crusher, a hammer wielder with barrier armor and the powerful Juggernaut skill. Staying mobile prevents him from catching me as I cover ground quickly. Oof, that running chop has to hurt. Underneath Berg, we can find the Ancestral General guarding the Cryptea Memories. The mini-skellies go flying in a single slam, only for the Undead Protector to fall soon after. His ethereal sword is dangerous, but only if it hits you. And wow, this guy has some really sweet loot in the form of potions. Emerging from the necropolis, I meet a courier residing within the town inn. He claims old Sirocco has been badly damaged by the erupting of some volcanoes. If I can manage to find the leaders and bring them to safety, Damien will send food and supplies from Monsoon to assist in rebuilding. The courier then warns me that Caldera is not like other regions we've been to. Monsters there are much more formidable and can inflict terrible afflictions nearly impossible to recover from. I take a longer path towards Caldera as we still have one monster left to free the region from. The Royal Manticore controls a large swath of land of Enmerkar, recently becoming so aggressive hunters are afraid to go near the better hunting spots. She isn't hard to find as her white flames give her away instantly. She's very weak to fire, and due to how aggressive she could be, I decided to take full advantage of that. I find this foe to be particularly challenging as she can maneuver much more freely than most monsters, stepping backwards a great distance, covering ground quickly with her cheetah-like speed, and sweeping in a full 360 with her tree trunk-sized tail. As long as you stick to her like glue, you can mitigate most mistakes, but be ready to pounce when she gets up. Being more aggressive than I usually am grants me the upper hand. I was stopping all of her attacks just before they reached me. With the combined power of my debuffs applied, she slumps over, never to hunt the innocent traveler again. It's not often you get to no-hit the Royal Manticore, and whoa, look at that. 5 alpha meat means 15 more sandwiches. We'll be eating good tonight. While not actually a mini-boss, I did encounter the Bandit Manhunter. I presume this is a mercenary paid by the Montcalm tribe to hunt me down. If so, he probably should have found me way before I gained this much power. If I can use a single combo to take you out, maybe it's time to give up on the mercenary life and pick up farming or something. Make some sandwiches and grab the Mufino's trading backpack, and it's on to Caldera for some sample collecting. Upon reaching Old Sirocco, it appears the place really has gone up in lava. Not only that, but the abusive nobles have been overthrown, leaving these 3 commoners in charge. I tell them about the incoming supplies, and they decided it's better to completely rebuild in the stone quarry rather than mess with the crumbling buildings we stand in now. While running through the wreckage for samples and leftover gems, I run into a Scarlet Emissary. A new creature on this journey, but one my past self seems to remember. Demons straight from hell, conjured by the Scarlet Lady herself. You hope to never cross paths with one, although that ship sailed just seconds ago. Good old Spirit Varnish gives me a chance as a fireball manages to catch me in panic. I took the coward's way out and used running attacks to chip away at him. When facing a being of such caliber, you use what you've got, okay? Taking the back entrance out of this crumbling city, I loot a nice glass weapon and let down the bridge so we can access this area later. This happens to be near the Primal Ritualist's hut where I can sell a few items and purchase the Miasmic Tolerance passive, granting me status resistance when a tent buff is active. I never go anywhere without that tent buff, so it's basically up 24/7. Oh, and I almost forgot the wind altars just behind this hut as well. Good, because wind infuse is going to be more important than ever in this volcanic region. Let's get this town up and running, shall we? I didn't do any money farming this time around, so let's see how painful this process will actually be. Starting out, I build 3 houses. Throw them over in the corner here out of the way. 2 weeks helping with construction, and we can now build the hunting lodge for food, mason's workshop for stone, and woodcutter's lodge for wood. Already, I didn't have enough funds to completely finish the 3, which is not a good sign. No matter, we can make a quick run through the steam bath tunnels. This cave has several giants walking around, all having a chance to drop expensive axes or valuable potions. They're not all that difficult by this point either, although the special crossbow giant is an exception. Stay in closer so he can't shoot at you a lot, and it's not all that bad. I think the Greataxe moveset is perfect for giants over anything else, mainly due to them being so large you'd have to try to miss. With a lot of loot to sell, I head back and finish construction on the workshops. As those finish up, our town runs into a small problem. The workers are addicted to a drug called ambrain, of which doesn't grow in this rocky plain very well. Dorian tasks me with acquiring a Mimortur egg and fertilizing it. Not hard to find the hive, as it's this massive brown nest on the other side of Caldera. Once inside, there's a lot to get through with several monsters prowling around. Not exactly sure what a Mimortur is supposed to be. Their nest habits remind me of large ants, their faces look a bit like a moose, and then they have the large, powerful body of a gorilla. They even stick their heads in the ground to create shockwaves. Inside the very center of this structure is a matriarch Mimortur, queen over the savage beasts, and just there in the corner we see she's guarding a fresh nest of eggs. At this point, I've got an ample supply of fresh foods to take before every combat scenario. Each grants me more damage, defense, and everything else I need to take down such a beast with ease. That word's kind of funny in that way. You think, oh, I need a lot of potions before battle. Well, in reality, foods are way better. Carrying my green preservation bag up until now kept multiple stacks of delicious edibles stored away. Gently grabbing one of the eggs, we now need a way to fertilize it. Not too far away is the sulfuric caverns where we should be able to get the task done. Too bad this place is filled with not only dangerous foes, but poisonous gas up to your neck. Floating Medee's creatures are the perfect example of how over-the-top Poltergeist is now. Each has a decent pool of HP and hefty resistances. Regardless, I can defeat them in a mere 6 hits, and that's without any skills used. Being as aggressive as possible lets me stunlock all the jelly-like creatures and clear a path to the blue pool. But what's this? Some old Sirocco nobles managed to escape from the city's collapse and bar my way in. We deal with this scum with extreme malice. Oh man, this is so much fun. Flash Onslaught into a Predator Leap, rounding it all out with a final execution. You really have to try a run like this at some point if you haven't already. I feel almost immortal, axing my foes with immeasurable power. Inside the blue room, we dip our egg into the sulfur pool for it to be fertilized instantly in front of our eyes. With farms now able to be set up in town, we can begin building specialized buildings for designing our economy. My first choice is the food store, as it's the best building for every run, makes you funds every day, and grants access to powerful foods at a reasonable price. With it requiring a digested mana stone, I quickly realized this was an unusual run. I often build the same buildings every time for efficiency's sake. However, to get the best buffs possible, I'm gonna need to fully max this town out with several different unique structures, which means turning a lot of samples in for the right materials. When I say a lot, I mean this video took like 2 weeks longer to finish because I couldn't get the right items. Curse you, RNG. While we get all this going, let's hunt down a few mini-bosses hanging around. Inside the cold corridors of Chersonese, we encounter the Quartz Elemental, a frosty horse made of shiny stones. He ended up getting all chicken on me and terrified to attack, I guess. Forcing him into a corner, which really isn't where I want to fight either, he refuses to engage and gets chopped before changing his mind. Next, I head into the volcano itself, where a fiery foe awaits. Before him, however, I wanted to test how challenging gargoyles would be. I often avoided them on my bow run as they waste too many arrows, and the special variant we fought in the ziggurat earlier did not fill me with confidence. Poltergeist happened to make all the difference though, as I could cut through his nearly immune physical defense. Gotta try it on one more though, just to see if that last was a fluke. Nope, we don't have to be afraid of these stone figures at all. Nothing shall stand in my way as I axe outward. Are you not impressed? In the heart of this molten zone, we find the volcanic gastrocene, a snail turned far more deadly from the fire around it. Something worth mentioning here. Take a look at my temperature bar. You can't even see it because my hot weather defense is through the roof. This armor plus my passive buffs makes me never have to worry about the hot weather of this region with a mere drink of water. Even as close as we are to this lava, it has no effect. Dodging fire effortlessly, I avoid collision with balls of green decay and embarrass the slimy cretin. Oh nice, he dropped a plant sample, I can use that. With another run through the steam tunnels, I crack down on the giants once again and reach the Cali Grey hero, a red lion ape protected by his blue-colored twin. This guy attacks faster than I think any enemy in the game, and it's very important to split up the duo before things go south. He actually wields a Greataxe called Grind, which we could use instead of the Tsar. I probably should have tried it, but it's really not my favorite weapon, so I didn't bother. A cool guitar you can beat monsters over the head with, just not this time around. Well, that's all but about 3 of the mini-bosses in Caldera, and enough money saved up to get the town looking more solid than ever. There's always a good chance you can find a few samples inside the Friendly Immaculate's cave. It's actually really hidden. If you didn't already know to head towards this small section of rocks, I don't know how you'd find it. But oh crap, I forgot about this. He immediately starts attacking me when I enter. No, we're gonna have to take him down. When you join the Holy Mission faction, all Scourge beasts become very hostile towards you. All Scourge includes the good ones, such as our Friendly Immaculate. While as depressing as this is, there aren't even any samples here. Gosh darn it, that's so typical. Ah, but now is a good time to complete the Vault of Stone. Entering this dark and forgotten cave always gives me the EBGBs. No time like the present to let out an ancient evil clearly locked away for good reasons. The ancient dwellers have now been unleashed upon Caldera. Let's try and keep them as contained as possible for the time being. I might have the know-how to beat these creatures back, but they still scare me. Take too many hits in close range and you will be petrified, dying instantly. The cramped tunnels in which they prowl don't leave much room for combat, forcing me to keep them staggered or lose all hope. Then, down in the deepest, darkest section of the cave dwells She Who Speaks, a larger and more powerful ancient dweller having grown strong off the pure magic contained here. I always have wondered how these creatures came to be. Did they mutate after water levels dropped, turning from anglerfish-like creatures into the monsters we see today? And who in the past was strong enough to lock them away? Clearly they couldn't defeat the demons, so how did they get them behind bars? Questions without answers, I'm afraid. But at least the most dangerous of them all is no longer floating along this mortal plane. Unless they're secretly immortal? Terrifying thoughts aside, we can make some quick coin by fighting in the Cali Grey Arena. Mention to the clan leader that you want to fight and the rounds begin. Starting out, we have 2 ice enemies. The one element I have no defense against. Gunning for the beetle proves difficult with so much decay exploding around me. Without his little friend though, the slug goes kicking and screaming into the great beyond. Well, whatever equates to kicking for a non-legged creature. Round 2 throws us up against a Tor Crab and Mimatour. Deadly combo as each can catch you off balance while you focus on the other. Tor Crabs in general attack very quickly with almost no sign to look for. They also have range advantage with hot fireballs flung through the air. Probably should have handled that a bit better. Thankfully my high defenses allow for such sloppy combat when I happen to suck. For our final challenge, we face a single Caligray and Gargoyle. I always thought it was kind of odd that technically round 3 is the easiest. Okay, Gargoyles are like max threat level, but it's practically a 1v1 with Caligrays being minor obstacles at best. As long as you can kite the 2 into better positions, they can be handled in only a few attacks. Just use Brace to gain the upper hand as always, and we've earned the respect of Timmy the Kid Caligray. I don't really use pets much because they scare the crap out of me at weird angles, but Timmy's awesome enough to mention. With some more samples in hand, I can return to New Sirocco and finish construction on a city hall and general store. I never used to make the general store at all, but after realizing it has an upgrade letting you select a city to travel to, I can't go without it. As this city begins to grow, a new problem arises. Our current furnace is not strong enough to handle the current workload. We need to charge up a Chersonese stone deep within the Three Brothers volcano before other projects can be started. And here we see another change from the most recent outward update. The Chersonese stone now slows your dodge roll. Every backpack slows your dodge, often forcing you to take them off before combat. Some, however, are special and let you wear them with no impedance to your roll. This hunk of rock, for the longest time, has always let you roll freely, which didn't make any sense. The thing's like 150 pounds of icy rock. It should be heavier than that. Now it does slow your roll, making it slightly more difficult to charge it. Throwing some foods and a few potions into my pocket, we set out to fire up the old volcano. Everything here is manageable as we tested earlier, and with the bare minimum buffs to enter combat at all, we can clear out the monsters in our way. Finally, in the sweltering lava itself, I dropped a rock and ran across this bridge into danger. 3 enemies, who shouldn't be here at all, block my path. Usually I'd run them back towards a snail and have them all fight it out. Not today, though. I faced them head-on of sheer courage, although probably more so stupidity if we're being honest. Fire elementals, or these horse creatures, terrify me. Their attacks are very dangerous, holding more fire than I care to get close to. Focusing each down one by one worked just as planned while I circled around them to avoid fireballs. Okay, that went better than I expected. With no more obstacles in my way, I reacquired my frozen backpack and placed it into the charging stone. In a few moments, the rock becomes red hot and filled with energy to make a forge out of. Man, just imagine being in the middle of a volcano like this and trusting the metal frame underneath you to continue holding up. Yet again, back in New Sirocco, Yosef thanks us endlessly, offering more buildings to construct if we so desire. Taking a look at the upgrades, I realized I had a long road ahead of me. 5 of the materials required I still don't have. While out scrounging for rocks, I managed to catch the Ark in a prime location. Just over the underside loading dock I can enter from behind. Pulling a lever here unlocks elevators, and pulling another lever guarded by a gargoyle unlocks the upper part. Spoiler, I'm doing this right now, but the upper section which this unlocks never landed in the correct spot for like the rest of my time in Caldera. Finicky ship never moves where I want it. Our hard work does pay off though, as we can now upgrade the food store, having it provide us with free food every 7 days. Considering I can throw it all in my backpack on the ground and have it last forever, I now have more than enough food buffs to live by. Free stuff really is always the best. Although, is it really free if I spent the money to build the store in the first place? Best not to think about it too hard probably. With the impending heat of Caldera still sweltering over the heads of its people, Evangeline tasks me to find a way to move the Ember Heart, a magical contraption in the heart of the volcano. Too bad no one but the Djinn can move it, and he doesn't really like humans. Apparently there is a way to lock him in place, but the item to do so is in the possession of a noble. A noble we don't know how to find either. The 2 most obvious places to look for him would be the Greataxe Arena or Ark. And since we were already at the arena earlier, let's go to the Ark. Before speaking to the guy who appears to have gotten himself imprisoned by the Caligrays, I make sure to buff up. Been here before in another life, and it ain't pretty if you're unprepared. While speaking to him about the Djinn, I noticed something. Edward Orville. Orville? That's an odd name. Wait a sec, this is the son of the head noble who became the Crimson Avatar. No wonder he was able to get his hands on such a powerful item. Snatching the amulet off his neck, he suddenly transformed into a scarlet emissary before our very eyes. Being as prepared as I was, and knowing how dangerous these demons are, I was able to defeat the hatred-filled monster. They're aggressive for sure and erratic with their attacks, but precisely timed blocks and dodges will win every time. With the ability to lock the Djinn in place, I locate the oil refinery under which he dwells. Except I haven't been in here yet, and the entire dungeon is filled with oil. To remove it, I must first enter the upper refinery and pull a lever guarded by a gargoyle. All of these stone constructs serve the Djinn. Whether he created them or just controls them, it's not really clear. Either way, they keep pesky humans out of his home. At least they're supposed to. With a lever pulled, oil is lowered just enough to reach the lower refinery. Pulling a lever here is going to lower the oil, so I can pull a lever here, which then lowers it even further to pull another lever here. Did you get all that? It's a series of levers to access the Djinn. That's a little less wordy. At the bottom, we pull one last lever, which sucks down the last of that nasty oil. Behind two Medis is a refinery key we can use to unlock the Djinn's Fortress of Solitude. He's not exactly happy to see we have the amulet and tries to end our life. Most things do in this world. The Djinn is an elephant-looking genie who controls very unique and powerful forms of magic. None of them are overly difficult to avoid, making for a surprisingly easy win. A little too easy, it seems, as he transforms into a Mega Djinn and begins Phase 2. Considering how well that first round went for me, you might think nothing of this next part. Except it was one of the worst fights I took up until this point. I was still getting in damage of my own, but taking far too many hits in the process. These purple explosions were much larger than I remembered, setting off just before I could dodge away. Without my skills that already got used up, there was no way to gain an edge. For the first time, I had to actually take a second and regroup, activating my Enrage skill to gain the boon again. More damage taken, and bleed finishes the fight for me. Wow, I am not pleased with that outcome at all. Felt like I was face tanking everything he threw at me. Just an ugly performance altogether. Nothing we can do about it, but humbling to say the least. With that defeat, the Djinn teleports over to town and moves the Ember Heart for us. We now have a magical contraption any mage can use to cool down our living quarters. With more space for buildings, I constructed a chapel and upgraded it as well. This lets me pay some silver to Owen the Healer for a special buff. It lasts about 2 days, I think, and is +4 barrier or elemental defense. And the upgrade brings along Paul, a devout disciple of Alat. Because of my ties to the Holy Mission, he gives me a free passive skill called Alat's Intervention. +2 barrier with +5 protection. Yeah, so becoming a paladin of the Holy Faction grants an insane amount of defense regardless of what armor you wear. At this point, I've got 19 protection and 6 barrier on top of all my other normal resistances. Who knew doing a god some favors would pay off? My next goal was to build the Gladiator Arena. Along with it, the Combat Academy upgrade. This lets me fight arena matches with different warriors to gain medals. I can spend medals at this specialist here for unique passive skills that take your build and push it more toward a specific playstyle. But who do we want to challenge this time around? Guardian of the Marsh is a good one, because he's basically us. A holy warrior from the swamp of the Hollowed Marsh, protected by palladium armor, and likely Alat himself. These duels are not to the death, of course, as all participants rest up and are ready to battle again within a week. I'm not willing to risk my own death to test my chances in hardcore though. You may notice this ironclad warrior uses Moon Swipe, a spinning swipe of immeasurable power. He'll follow this up with floating orbs of lightning that clutter the arena, forcing you to panic. Keep cool, however, and the fight is nothing to worry about. As long as you can block his attacks, staying in close avoids all the extra elemental damage and gives you ample time to chop at will. A holy warrior he may be, but a true rival he is not. Next up, we have the Masters of the Ocean. Viewers of my bow-only run will remember that these were the only opponents I fought in the arena when carrying a bow. That's because without the option to block, these other gladiators are hardly even fair. The 3 Kazites, however, only have the advantage of ganking it up. As long as we maneuver into optimal positions and target 1 Kazite at a time, they don't really have enough health or impact resistance to stay active very long. Perfect Strike, I noticed, is much less effective against humanoids as most will dodge away from it. Still, you can use the burst of forward movement to cover ground, making it worthwhile regardless. And for my final opponent, I decided to face the Wolf King Warrior. I am more than familiar with this guy as he's given me a tough time before. Unlike most people in the land of Arai, he battles you with 2 unique forms of combat. A chakram, or floating disc that gets thrown outward, and a sword of pure ethereal summoned from rune magic. The unusual style of combat can be disorienting at first, offering very little in the way of visual cues before you get hit. What you may notice, however, is I toppled him instantly. This is the simplest way to make outward quote-unquote easy. Very large amounts of impact can be applied at one time. Zarax, plus Wind Infuse, plus the Enrage buff that's also increased from the Cabal Hermit skill tree. Add in Confusion and you can stagger any opponent in 1 at most 2 attacks. Any weapon has the potential to do so, but Zar items are rare and valuable as they do it the best. If your enemy can't fight back, they can't be a threat to you. With 3 gladiators defeated, we now hold enough Conqueror's medals to buy 1 passive skill. Any of them are up for grabs, but you don't want most unless it fits your build. You can get things like longer rolling distance, but doubles the stamina cost when doing so. Increase elemental damage, but halves your physical. The passive we want is called Bronze. Increases physical damage by 25% and increases max stamina by 25%. The downside being lower elemental damage by 40%. From now on, any varnish we use will be much less effective. But we do already have Poltergeist to make up for that, essentially giving us 2 buffs for free. Raw damage unfortunately is different than physical and not buffed by this, but we still hit with 40 physical at any given moment for it to honestly make our crazy powerful build even stronger. Another building I had on my list for construction was the Water Purifier. This one offers better water for drinking and free Gaberry wine every week. 8 bottles at a time that, remember, does grant us more defense. I also had enough samples after another 2-hour farming session to upgrade my general store with the Caravan Wagon Path, letting me travel to any town in the world for just 300 silver. I do believe that's the max amount of buildings we can construct with more buffs than we could ever dream for. I've now completed my orders and helped Sirocco rebuild its wealth. But when explaining this to Evangeline, she states that something still isn't right. The excess lava underneath town is rising at an alarming rate. Before long, it'll overtake the city and we'll be back where it all started. What could be causing this almost magical change in the volcanic structure? When out of nowhere, Chamberlord Orville appears before us. The leader of Old Sirocco has become a sorcerer of great magical power. He's causing this change in magma and will continue to do so until we return to work under his throne. Screw that, we gotta go find this traitor and save the world for, what, like the 3rd time now? And make sure to stock up on foods, potions, and all the usual buffing consumables. Paying for a defensive buff at the chapel, it's time to set out. Finding where the Chamberlord is hidden isn't actually all that hard, mainly because there's a giant red rock floating over there that I don't remember seeing before. Underneath the meteor is a crater containing the Scarlet Sanctuary. Twisted halls of red designed for the glory of she who we do not speak of. The Red Lady's minions are everywhere, guarding the various levers opening up corridors deeper into the palace halls. Several Scarlet emissaries prowl here, forcing me to be as careful as possible. All these different variants of red monsters here are some form of warped spirit. Likely humans who followed the Red Lich and had their spirits molded into pure fire, serving their master even beyond death. Finally, through the maze of demons, we arrive face to face with the Crimson Avatar. He claims one of the very rebels I now protect and serve arranged for the murder of Zephyrien, an attempt at swaying me to his side over the serpent-tongued rebels who clearly hide vital info from me. No time to think about that. I would never serve the hatred of the Scarlet Lady. My loyalty holds true to Alat and the 3 Pillars of Truth. I muster up every buff I can think of and step into the arena with this puppet of red. The Crimson Avatar is insanely powerful, likely one of the strongest sorcerers in history, being given power straight from the Red Lady. With laser beams, exploding balls, massive red chaos explosions, and several debuffs that can outright kill a man through the toughest armor in existence. He also happens to be immune to all the debuffs we can apply. Confusion for impact? That's out the window. Pain for more physical damage? And not this time around. How about bleeding to at least help out over the long fight? Nope, it's useless here too. His 4500 HP and 88% impact resistance makes things more than difficult. I ended up removing both skills that take away my buffs upon activation and replacing them with potions instead. Stamina is helpful as this fight lasts longer than your buffs can hold up, most of the time. Panacea is there just in case I take too many fireballs and get inflicted with some nasty affliction like Holy Blaze or worse, Petrification. And there's health potions for the more than obvious reasons. Handling myself well with blocks, dodges, and high-powered axe swings, I was noticing one small problem. In order to stay aggressive and punish the Mad Mage, I need to stay in close. But there's this one move of magic he can summon directly underneath him. In the middle of swinging or pre-blocking for an attack, I'm randomly knocked off my feet and in range of more magic. Not to mention, his immense power is too much for me to fully block, knocking me over even more. I found it best to just keep attacking as often as I could. Rushing in as he summoned ranged moves gave me just enough time to stagger him for execution to put in work. Fighting a sorcerer powered up by a demon lich is harder than it looks, but I didn't come this far just to lose. A few final axe swings, and this one's for you, Zephyrien. May those who plotted against you now rot in hell. Your story is finally avenged. The Red Lich screams in agony as her plans are foiled yet again. If she thinks she's getting off the moon and coming back, well, I'll always be here to stop her. Upon returning to town for the final time, everything seems to be in order. The magma levels have lowered once more, our economy is booming with food and water selling to every region in the land. I'm left in charge for now, as clearly, I've done quite a fine job this far. Yet something is looming in the back of my head. Upon questioning Evangeline, it appears her own father hired the assassins and bullets that would be used to ambush our brother in arms. He was angry that Zephyrien revealed the rebels' plans to the nobles as he believed a rebellion to be the wrong move. This all led to her father being convicted a traitor by the nobles. They exiled him into the caldera, where he was later found petrified by a gargoyle. Evangeline seems remorseful, and it wasn't her idea to go along with the ambush to begin with. I forgive her, only sad I can't find this stone traitor and break what's left of him into pieces. Well, at least now all loose ends have been tied. Oh hey, our good buddy the courier. Damien wrote me a letter thanking me for my hard work and relaying that I'm finally free to go hunt down the Scourge for a lat once again. But before we do that, let's defeat the last two mini-bosses left in the land of Arai. I spend far longer than I'd like to admit getting the Ark to land in its upper section station, where I can enter and defeat several gargoyles. From the looks of it, this upper area was a mini throne room for the Djinn back when he originally arrived here with the Caligrays. The several stone constructs defending it proved me correct. Behind some bars, a cracked gargoyle emerges from his perfect pose. Once you've taken on a godlike entity, stuff like this barely registers a yawn. I wonder how this guy was cracked in the first place. Does every gargoyle get stronger when they're cracked? Huh, I wonder. And then we returned to the sulfuric caverns of gas and floating jellies. A grandmother Medivh moved in after we sent the nobles packing. As luck would have it, most of the Medivhs here wandered further out where I could pick them off. Moving into the blue room, I take my time, careful to avoid all the explosions and lasers. Patience is key, as too many axe swings would leave me far too vulnerable. More rocky terrain than I would like to fight on, but in the end, there wasn't much these floating creatures could do to me. We've officially freed the world of every dangerous monster, every powerful lich, and all impending wars, beating the entirety of hardcore Outward with just a Greataxe. And the new overpowered Poltergeist enchant, can't forget about that. But what about the arena bosses, secretly hidden around the different regions? Will the Greataxe perform well against the toughest challenges available? With all the materials required to enter each already stored up, let's go see for ourselves. We begin in Chersonese with the Trog Queen, a true gank fight against several elite troglodytes and their birth mother. Picking off the green grenadiers first is always a good idea, next gunning for the mages as to avoid unnecessary debuffs they can apply. The armored ones prove slightly more challenging as they hug the tall queen where she could hit me as well. Now in a 1v1, let's see if I can't outdamage her healing magic. But I'd say we got this one in the bag. Staying in close prevents as much magic from getting summoned, and with Brace for an advantage, I easily stagger her backwards into a helpless position. My favorite attack of all is a double heavy combo, swinging the axe far around my body for 4 total attacks instead of 1. Can't say I'm displeased with how this went at all. On top of the Conflux Mountain, we enter into combat with the Brand Squire. Perfect strike against perfect strike makes for an epic showdown. His quick movements easily dodge past my swings as he mixes it up with blasts of magic. No matter, his puny sword cannot match my ultimate power as his limp body falls over dead. The Elite Mantis Shrimp is a tad different though. This large beast has much more impact resistance and will attack with devastating claw thingies. But the combos are too much. She can't even keep up with me at this point. This is something lost on a lot of Outward players because you don't notice it until combat really clicks into place. The actual design of melee weapons is brilliant. Every time you move in, you've got a chance of a normal or a heavy. Then you can follow up with a normal or a heavy to add in a combo move. Then maybe use a running attack or mere swing after swing to play it safe. It feels perfect when you can pull it off correctly. And of course, we get a nice execution to end it with. Just beautiful. Well, the Hallowed Marsh houses some of the weaker bosses, so let's head there next. Starting with the Alpha Taunosaur though, the hardest of the 3. This fight is one of the hardest battles overall, I feel like just for me, because Taunosaurs have different movements than most monsters. They're gonna more often than not jump backwards as you begin to swing, locking you into an attack that is still gonna miss completely. A Greataxe's length can help big time, but it still isn't the best option. Get clawed too much, and now you're in trouble with bleed slowly eating away at your HP. Briefly, I thought pinning the beast up against the railing would stop the backwards movement. Nope, he moves side to side, completely avoiding a stun lock altogether. Towards the end, I got hit by a nasty wave of fire, leading to a lot of panic rolling. Lost my head for a bit, but a few more swings with one execution to move me closer, we can suck down a health potion. In the Giant's Village, we can speak with the praying statue and engage with the priest High Monk. Being the easiest arena boss, it barely lasted a minute. What I can mention is how clean my skill usage was here. I got hit a few times, yes, but one keybind after another left a giant dazed and utterly helpless. Because of how close giants love to get to you, it's actually good for the Greataxes moveset. You don't miss at all really, while never needing to waste stamina running forward. Push kick has been helpful at times for just a little stagger, however I'm noticing I only used it like 5 times the entire run. On the other side of town, we activate another statue and enter with the 3 Ash Giants. I always think of this fight as a joke, which had me very unprepared for the challenge it would instantly become. All 3 attack at the same time, and when any of them hit, I get staggered out of my attack, losing health and wasting damage at the same time. I was able to pop my multi-target skills right off the bat, but that didn't stop the quick spiral of bad moves I would make. Really wanting the larger giant out of commission forced me to resort to running attacks. It worked, while also leaving me at half health. Less giants means less of a pain though, as I fumbled around in poisonous smoke to chop down the second. Probably should have avoided using feral strikes so soon, as it takes away my ever so important rage boon. With 1 giant left though, it's almost too easy, as I send him flying through the air. That's the swamp. Much harder than I expected, so let's try the Antique Plateau next. This area is also not too bad, and I need to get into a better groove again. The friendly Immaculate may be dead, but his bird is very much alive. I enter his cage and attack the crazed being. Fun fact about this fight, raw damage is actually the answer. He has the lowest health of any boss in Outward, while also having the highest resistances in every stat. Using raw damage, you can completely cut through all those for a hilariously quick win. I mean, a single good combo leaves him vulnerable for the execution of a lifetime. Poor guy. This new enchant's pretty unfortunate for you, isn't it? Entering the circle of flowers down by this mana lake brings us to the elite Buzu, a large buffalo who uses ethereal blasts to catch you off guard. As long as you use skills to push forward, it's reasonable, and he doesn't do that much physical damage with our insane defense. Now, if you do for some reason want a different enchant besides Poltergeist, there is another way to make use of raw damage. Perfect Strike from the Warrior Monk skill tree actually deals raw damage on its own. This is the quick slash forward you see me using, and it also ignores blocking. This allows any melee weapon in the game to deal raw damage with or without an enchant, and while not a skill you can spam repeatedly, it does cool down for a few uses at least. Poor Buzu fell prey to my unmatched combos and falls down at my feet with minimal effort. Here at the Scourge statue, we turn in Tourmaline for a bout with the elite Sublime Shell. A great matchup and still one of the coolest looking enemies I've ever seen. So at this point, how am I feeling about the Greataxe? While I still think it's probably the hardest weapon type to master, I do have a newfound respect for it. Not only does this thing have insane damage and impact, but its combos are better than any of the other weapon types. Each feels different enough, and when used with Wind Infuse, enemies can't retaliate for well over 5 seconds. It's a weapon that feels really bad early on when you can't speed it up, move in with skills, or deal damage without taking too much. But somehow I ended up with the perfect build here at the end to make it just right. Tank a bunch of different hits with super high defenses and use your other tools to keep swinging. My almost maxed out stamina makes it far easier to use too. I think that's probably something you will want to build into. It was more than the big guy here could handle, I know that much. By my count, that's 3 regions down and 3 to go. A quick travel over to Levant and the deserty bosses await us. Heading into the throne room, we can access Calixa. Fighting against the new godlike queen, we have a challenging but fair duel. Typically, you're either fighting humanoids or large monsters. This is one of the few times you're fighting a large being who behaves like a human fighter. Her shield is used both to block and knock you over the head. Staying in close like this for melee means she almost never shoots from her mace gun and instead focuses purely on melee. She can be very dangerous with fast attacks dealing high damage, but I found she will often attack you with a very slow windup. When that happens, you can stagger her out of it rather than dodge away. It's kinda sad we don't get a weapon like hers in the game. Imagine defeating her and you're rewarded with a slow melee weapon that also shoots elements from it. It's a neat idea, especially when she pulls up her shield to hide behind as she pops off the shots. With plenty of stamina used up, the queen has been beaten down. Over in the Electric Lab, we can take on the Crescent Sharks. This is one of the more interesting encounters of the entire run. First off, my chest piece allows me to have very high defense to ethereal damage, so the ethereal traps aren't too big of a threat like they usually are. The easiest way to take this trio on is with high amounts of damage over time. Bleed, Poison, Burning even better all 3 together, and you hardly need to attack them at all. With none of this at my disposal, I had to get my hands dirty, which is very difficult as they will constantly stagger you out of attacks. But I also noticed that no matter how many times they hit me, I simply didn't take any damage. My HP could be moving down ever so slightly. If so, HP regen from sandwiches is bringing it back up to full. This should not really be the outcome with 3 different enemies hitting me at the same time. But then I remembered how much protection I have. Dealing 24 physical damage per bite, my protection is at 22 fully buffed up. Add in the 60% physical defense I have, and that equates to about 1-ish damage taken from every attack. Actually, a little less if you want to get technical. While it's very uncommon to become completely immune to physical damage, I have somehow managed to do so, making this fight a breeze. I mean, I'm taking lots of hits, because 3v1 isn't easy, but doesn't matter much as I slowly whittle them down one by one. And then the last boss of Abrasar is in the wrecked ship, Elite Beast Golem. Let's see how you go this time. Not really much to say about this encounter. Beast Golems in general don't have a lot of stagger resistance. With my very high impact, he's knocked back every second hit, and hardly able to damage me at all either. It mostly turned into me juggling him around the arena until his health eventually disappeared completely. Never got to shoot his lasers at all, which definitely makes this easier. I really love this build. Did not expect to enjoy it this much at all, but man, nearly a perfect way to play. Helps that the Elite Hood is an incredible item. Has to be one of the best melee helmets in Outward. Caldera bosses are always last, with one of them being the hardest encounter of all time. So let's hunt down the few in Enmerkar Forest first. The double Lich fight is centered in Berg after you sleep until midnight. Usually, I'd switch to Entomber armor and become completely immune to their damage. This time around, I already have high lightning and decay resist, so I kept my armor the same. With near immunity to decay, I wanted to cut down to Lightmender first. I think this is the correct way to go about it, because while the Jade Lich becomes almost impossible to dodge with his tentacles, they don't do all that much, whereas the lightning and spear throws will stop your attacks more often than not. After all the debuffs are applied, there isn't much poor Mendy can do. Just get out of this mess for a sec, and we can clean him up. Now for the Jade Lich. Much trickier as he doesn't have a melee option, and will likely teleport away whenever given the chance. This does mean he can't hit us with anything though, or even get off a magic attack apparently. The last couple bosses have looked exceptionally well, to the point where I hardly had to try at all. That all stops now, for better or worse. Making sure to sleep in my Berg house for a boost to ethereal defense, I made my way over to the Cabal Wind Temple. Inside, we can interact with the center statue and take on the Dreamer Immaculate. Here lies one of the most difficult fights I had to axe through. Immaculates are very nimble and fast creatures. This one's been buffed by an immense amount of ethereal damage. While I can tank that well enough, I can't hit him. Every time I stagger him, he falls backwards, missing my extra attacks. And something I hadn't been worried about at all was my corruption level. Only a few seconds in, however, it's slowly rising to the max. Corruption isn't a big deal most of the time. Let it reach 100% though, and you will explode internally, nearly killing you. Blocking does not actually block corruption, so every attack we block builds this up along with any damage we take. A recipe for disaster. One cool aspect of this fight is the fact that we could very well be fighting the friendly Immaculate again. It's possible this is what he became after death, or that we're fighting a version of him he wishes to avoid becoming. Not all that clear, but as my corruption levels rise, my panic sets deeper in. Mistakes keep happening far too often. Just before I explode, I'm able to take the Cretan down. That was way too close. I did have the health to spare, so it probably wouldn't have been fatal. I just didn't like my chances. One more boss to go for this region, that being the Burning Man. I made sure to collect some petrified wood and craft petrified armor at the town blacksmith, making my fire resistance much higher. How you even do this fight without fire immunity, I will never know. This spirit, corrupted by a red lich, spews fire and explodes uncontrollably. And wow, does the Greataxe suck in this boss fight. It flies past him instead of hitting directly several times. I was able to reposition and fix the issue by not staying quite so close, which then forced me to take Fire Blast after Fire Blast to the face. Can't say I enjoyed it. Now in control though, I swiftly chop through his remaining HP, hopefully before I burn away. Well, now this has got me all rattled before the hardest boss fights. Please let me do this, come on, just 4 more left. After a couple hours restocking on important potions, I'm ready to battle Caldera. We begin at good old Granny. With 2 Cryptea warriors to defeat several times over, I can't waste my skills. The Grandmother loses HP every time one of the enemies goes down, and then she revives the warriors again. The key to winning is defeat one opponent at a time. If Grandma's reviving one of the Cryptea, then she can't pelt you with attacks herself. The mage is a reasonable opponent, while the other guy's much more dangerous. Hitting traps he places around the arena applies bleed, which is a terrifying status to catch. Then his poison bombs can quickly diminish your HP as well. I was more than impressed with the damage I could deal to each enemy. Once they're knocked, I can get in a full combo. The mage, however, proved tricky as she kept blasting me when I was finishing off the halberd wielder. All things considered, this could have gone a lot worse. My immense amount of stamina leaves so much room for avoiding sticky situations. Following the ghastly encounter, we enter the River of Red Cave to battle an elite Tor Crab. Contrary to the bosses thus far, I haven't fought Caldera's arena bosses very many times. They require fully completing New Sirocco to unlock, which is not something I've always done in the past. And since last time we ran with a bow, I wasn't sure how hard this would be. As a Tor Crab, he's pretty normal. Claw swipes, head pokes, and moves side to side. The difference being his fire blasts. They're now multi-shots spreading around the arena, some cold and some hot. I was under the assumption that staying in close would prevent this move. Not true, however, as he can do it pretty much whenever he likes. Some running around will be important. It's kinda hard to get a good look at the crabby fellow, but catch enough glimpses and he's a super unique looking monster. Looks almost prehistoric and could definitely be an ancient dinosaur of some kind, at least in this world. Once in position, he's almost too easy to attack with his large body doing him in. Then in New Sirocco, we can head down near the statue below and encounter the 3 gargoyles. I'm always at least skeptical about this one. You battle one gargoyle warrior, then a mage, then an alchemist. Each presents you with a different mechanic while all having absurd defenses. The warrior is easy, sticking purely to melee, which gives me time for blocking and time for dealing damage. Simple enough as long as I pay attention. The mage was what worried me originally, but turns out to be easy as well. When he summons magic splooty balls, simply run away. Attack repeatedly when they disappear and repeat for less than 30 seconds. And finally, the Alchemist, who makes himself completely immune to physical damage with an aura shield. We cut through it with Poltergeist, but it's really slow going. I also kept messing up my attacks because he was being way more active than I expected. Had to actually step back and heal up real quick. Most important thing is don't get hit by the AoE. That can petrify you, which is easily the worst way to go out. Took another year and a half, but we whittled him down eventually. I would love to know the correct tactic for this Alchemist Gargoyle. He's such a nightmare to deal with, in my opinion. And finally, down in the depths, guarded by ancient dwellers, we debuff ourselves with an ethereal lodge and battle the final boss of Outward, the elite Crimson Avatar. I don't care how many times you fought this guy, I don't care what kind of build you made, he is always really freaking hard. Mainly because his extremely high amount of HP means the battle will last longer than any other. My plan to counter this was start with a fire varnish. We can then burn him for fire damage and switch to wind infuse later on mid-battle. I wasn't having any problems dodging the magic, but his melee was terrifying me. With a negative 35% physical resistance debuff required just to enter the fight, I cannot get hit by that. Brace got me in there just to start things off. Good old Brace doing its thing. And you might notice my hotbar looks a little different. I knew this time around that pain and confusion couldn't be applied. So taking off my high-powered but only one-time use skills gives me room to slot stamina, health, and another special potion for buffs. When the fight inevitably lasts longer than my buffs, I can still stay in the battle at least. There's something about it though that's still extremely fun. All the chaos floating around you, every button press counting more than the last, it's a cool fight. Forcing the player away from those super strong debuffs completely changes how you go about taking him down. Somehow, through literal magic, Wind Infuse managed to last the rest of this fight. With an awesome jump forward, a sad miss on the execution, then another instant slash, we cut him down. Officially beating Outward's hardest boss and completing the hardcore Greataxe only challenge. Back in Sierza, we fill up our lighthouse stash with jewels and treasures of great power, storing our armor, this glorious weapon, and any potions we may yet leave to our descendants. Heading to bed knowing that Greataxes aren't bad, they're just misunderstood. Enchanted with Poltergeist, the Tsar Axe reigns king above all weapons and will forever go down in history as a monster-slaying machine. I hope you enjoyed this journey here today, and I thank you for watching. Until RI calls upon me to solve its problems yet again, I bid you farewell. Stay safe, and ask yourself, what will he beat the game with next? Feel free to make your guesses down below, and I'll catch you next time.